Chapter 334, The 10 Great Practitioners. 4. Ming Dong's match was right after Jianchen, so after the announcement, he and his opponent entered the space gate. Almost as if arranged by the heavens, Ming Dong's opponent had been one of the two people that had mocked them, Kaja. Before he had left, Ming Dong had a small grin on his face. Jianchen, I have to chop this guy in half. Slapping Ming Dong on his shoulders, Jianchen gave him an encouraging look without saying anything. Kaja had a dark smile on his face as he spoke. How coincidental, my opponent is you? It seems that God no longer wishes for you to remain alive and allowed me to take control. Kid, aren't you supposed to be mad? You'll be mad soon enough. Hearing those words, Ming Dong leaked some killing intent into his words as he spoke. Spare me your big words. Wait until we get into the arena. I'll make it so you can't even cry anymore. With those words, Ming Dong immediately walked through the space gate and into the arena. Even with death near at hand, you are so arrogant still. Kaja Fei spoke in disdain as he walked into the arena. Begin. As soon as the two men entered, a loud voice called out to them again. Instantly, a large amount of killing intent flowed from Kaja Fei as he stared at Ming Dong like a bloodthirsty magical beast. A radiant Saint Force attributed sword appeared in his hand, forming a 2-meter long sword. The long sword emitted a bright milky light that made it seem as if it were a divine sword. Go and die! Kaja Fei roared as he flew toward Ming Dong with his sword swinging fiercely toward him. With a small laugh, Ming Dong took out his cyan-colored sword before disappearing from view. In a flash, he flew toward Kaja Fei and almost as if his sword had blended in with the wind, it streaked across Kaja Fei's waist with a cyan glow, leaving behind a fierce-looking wound. Ming Dong's speed was unbelievably fast to the point where even Kaja Fei wouldn't be able to keep up. Feeling the wound on his waist, Kaja Fei could only see his hand drenched in his own blood. With an ugly expression, Kaja Fei tried to figure out just when he had been injured. He had insulted and threatened that Ming Dong wouldn't be leaving the arena alive, but he didn't think that in the very first exchange he would be the one damaged. This was a shame that could not stand. Brat, you're dead. Kaja Fei's glare grew dark before a milky white glow emerged from his wounds at the same time as he was talking, causing his wounds to heal quickly. Ming Dong sneered in disdain. I've heard that you cultivators with a radiant Saint Force are not killable and are called the Undying. Today we'll see just how undying you actually are. With that, Ming Dong flew toward Kaja Fei and disappeared within the next instance. What a fast speed! Heavens, for his speed to be that fast, could he be a wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master? Outside of the arena, many people cried out in amazement as they saw the speed that Ming Dong had just revealed. Even Kaja Fei grew deathly serious as he watched Ming Dong flash away. As soon as he grew close, Kaja immediately shouted out loud as he brought his radiant saint weapon toward Ming Dong's chest. However, he had managed to only cut into an empty space where Ming Dong's mirror image had been. Crap! Kaja Fei exclaimed at this bad development. Without a second's worth of a reaction, a sudden stinging pain could be felt from behind as a cyan-colored sword stabbed through his chest. Kaja Fei shouted out in anger as he dashed forward so that the sword would be taken out of his body. In the next moment, a large amount of radiant Saint Force coursed through his body to treat the wound. While the wound on his chest wasn't fatal, it was still a heavy injury that would impact his fighting ability. Brat, you've truly angered me. I'll definitely smash your body into pieces. Kaja Fei's eyes grew bloodshot as he glared at Ming Dong with a furious expression. You truly do think yourself as invincible. If I wanted to kill you, then I would have stabbed your heart earlier and killed you. Ming Dong laughed as if he was playing around with him. With a furious snarl, Kaji immediately burst with radiant Saint Force before forming a silver-white armor that covered his entire body sans his eyes. Karaga and Zar looked at the armored Kaja Fei with a look of surprise before Zar mocked him. What a nuisance! He reaps what he sows. Now that he took out his radiant saint armor, he has truly lost all face. Karaga stood by Zar's side with an ugly look on his face, but not a single word was spoken. The other competitors had been stunned by Ming Dong's speed. Although Ming Dong wasn't all that old, his strength wasn't weaker than anyone else here. His speed was especially fast and made everyone think that he was actually a Heaven Saint Master. That was because his speed had already far outstripped the realm an Earth Saint Master could attain, and even a sixth cycle wind attributed Earth Saint Master wouldn't be able to reach such a speed. Seeing the protective armoring on Kajave, Ming Dong was a bit dazed. This was the very first time he had seen such a thing, but he laughed anyways. Did you think wearing a tortoise shell would protect you? With that, Ming Dong disappeared once more before reappearing behind Kajave and slashed onto Kajave's chest. Bang! A loud sound was heard as Kajave flew back with a clear imprint on his chest armor. Ming Dong shook his slightly numb right hand as he muttered, "What a thick tortoise shell!" Kajave glared venomously at Ming Dong as he raised his sword above his head. "Brat, you've been aggressive enough. I'll send you on your way now, absolute truth, first cross." Radiant Saint Force surged out from Kajave's body as he brought his sword up. At the same time, a powerful amount of pressure suddenly came crashing down on the entire arena, causing Ming Dong to find it hard to breathe. Although the pressure had not affected the barrier, the entire arena was affecting even the outside area, causing everyone on the outside to feel the mountain-like pressure as well. The pressure was so much that none of them felt as if they could move and instantly went pale as their blood escaped from their faces. This is a Heaven Tier battle skill. He's using a Heaven Tier battle skill. A white-haired elder cried out in shock, causing everyone else to pale at the overwhelming power. At the same time, everyone stared in excitement at Kaja. Regarding Heaven Tier battle skills, they were a once-in-a-millennia opportunity to become rich. Not a single person wanted to miss this. Even the Heaven Saint Masters were all staring intensely at Kaja. This was because Heaven Tier battle skills were extremely expensive and some Heaven Saint Masters didn't even have a single Heaven Tier battle skill. Seeing Kajafei's battle skill, Ming Dong had a serious look at last. "Don't think that you're the only one with a Heaven Tier battle skill. I'll show you the power of an advanced Heaven Tier battle skill." With that, an equally large amount of energy began to ripple out of Ming Dong before collecting together in his sword. In the next moment, a stronger wave of pressure blew back and returned the pressure given to him by Kajafei's battle skill. Its power had reached even the outside area where countless of great Saint Masters coughed out a mouthful of blood as their faces grew even more pale. Suddenly, the entire crowd began to push backward as the ones incapable of enduring the pressure tried to escape. All sorts of panicked cries could be heard. Heavens, this is a Heaven Tier battle skill. Two Heaven Tier battle skills are about to clash. Who's going to be the winner and who will be the loser? With two Heaven Tier battle skills about to clash, this will cause even the heavens to shake. Who knows whether or not the arena will be able to handle it? Everyone get back. For two Heaven Tier battle skills to go head-to-head, what result will happen, we'll find out soon enough. The power from the Heaven Tier battle skills of Ming Dong and Kajafei had caused a panic as everyone from Great Saint Masters to Earth Saint Masters all flew into an outrage. Not a single of them had seen such a clash like this before. While the Heaven Tier battle skills continued to build up power, Ming Dong and Kajafei both continued to hold back. At their level, they needed to build up power for the full power. The wind began to grow turbulent as a strong gale was whipped up around the two competitors while they initialized their Heaven Tier battle skills. The pressure was enough for Great Saint Masters to be forced back, and even some Earth Saint Masters were forced a few steps back. By this point, only a few of the Heaven Saint Master experts were within 20 meters of the arena without any pain. However, each one of them had a layer of Saint Force protecting them. While it took some time to explain, it had only taken a few moments. In the end, both battle skills were fully prepared. Absolute Truth, First Cross. Sword of the Tyrant, Heaven-Shaking Blade. Chapter 335. The 10 Great Practitioners, 5. Two bangs could be heard as the two men's saint weapons flashed forward. Kajafei's silver sword seemed almost as if it was a divine sword that shot forward with seemingly two strikes that resembled a single cross that shined brilliantly in everyone's eyes, leaving behind a sun-spot-like image. With an overwhelming amount of power, the cross flew toward Ming Dong. Ming Dong's sword slashed toward Kajafei as well. As his sword was swung, the winds began to warp as the skies grew dark. Only a compressed amount of sword chi could be seen as it flew toward Kajafei and smashed against the cross. With a loud explosion, a large ripple of energy immediately scattered the entire area. Ming Dong's slash impacted against the cross, shattering it into pieces before continuing on toward Kaja. In the end, it pierced into his body before striking at the barrier behind him. With an explosion, the barrier rippled slightly before the attack dissipated. The explosive energy caused by the blow was quickly absorbed by the barriers surrounding the arena. Even as the energy struck against the barrier, it was like a pebble being thrown into the ocean and disappeared without any other external effect. In a flash, the entire arena was clean of any of the energy. Ming Dong continued to feel the brunt of this terrifying backlash. Compared to before, he no longer had the same easygoing face as before and was completely pale. The Saint force that was used up by the Heaven tier battle skill was truly immense, and after that one startling attack, his Saint force was almost all used up. Kajafei stood in front of him with sluggish eyes and a dazed expression. Kacha! Suddenly, the strange white piece of armor that covered Kajafei's body began to fracture into a large crack appeared from his forehead to the point between his legs, and the bright red tint of blood could be seen coming out. The silver armor right now was an extremely eye-catching sight. In the next moment, a truly surprising thing happened as Kajafei's body suddenly split in half before falling to the ground. His inner organs had long since been reduced to a minced mess as blood poured all over the place. After the two Heaven-tier battle skills had clashed, Ming Dong had came out unscratched while Kajafei was split in two. This sight caused everyone there to be breathless. Even the various Heaven Saint Masters were left speechless. At this moment, there were millions of people watching the finals, but the entire place was silent. So silent was the area that the heartbeat of everyone could be heard bumping at an accelerated pace. When the two Heaven-tier battle skills clashed, everyone had imagined its aftereffects. Most people had anticipated both sides to come out heavily injured and end in a tie. They hadn't imagined that the impossible would happen, and that after the two initialized their battle skills, one person would die a wretched death by being split in two while the other would remain unharmed. A single elder dropped down from the middle of nowhere with his silk robes. Standing in the air, it seemed as if he was treating the Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters as beneath him, yet he was not rude at all. Not a single of the Heaven Saint Masters below him had any complaints and/or any dissatisfaction toward this individual. Every single Heaven Saint Master had only respect for him and even a small yearning. The elder stared at the arena below before muttering, "A 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master versus a 5th Cycle Earth Saint Master. An advanced Heaven tier battle skill versus a primary Heaven tier battle skill. This type of outcome wasn't unexpected at all." While the elder didn't speak too loudly, his voice could still be heard loud and clear throughout the arena. Immediately, the entire crowd went into an uproar as they looked at Ming Dong with a mixture of envy, admiration, and jealousy. An advanced tier Heaven tier battle skill, he had one of those? I've been a Heaven Saint Master for over 20 years, but my strongest battle skill is only an advanced Earth tier battle skill, AI. He's already a 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master at this age? Dear heavens, that's impossible. Did I hear that right? He's not even 30 years old. How could he be a 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master? And a Heaven tier battle skill? Good God, that's just too shocking. This gathering of the mercenaries is far too much. In a short moment, all sorts of comments could be heard coming through all over the arena as everyone congratulated, complained, or grumbled their thoughts about Ming Dong. The floating elder looked at Ming Dong with a envious look before speaking absent-mindedly to himself. Who would have known that the great elder would have bestowed the technique that made him well known to you? For a youth to have such control over the sword of the tyrant. It seems that the great elder did not waste any effort to train you. Ming Dong, just who are you for the great elder to spend so much time and energy? The winner of this match was clear to see to anyone with eyes. So even though Ming Dong hadn't heard the cry of victory, a space gate opened up to let him out. With a breath of relief, Ming Dong looked at the split body of Kajafei and said, "I told you I'd split you in half, let's see if you believe me now." With that, he walked away and into the space gate. The space gate behind Ka Jaffe opened up, as well as several of the members of Mercenary City quickly came in and started to clean up the arena. Ming Dong returned to Jian Chen's side as everyone stared at him in a new light. Each one now had a deep fear imprinted on them. Even Karaga looked at Ming Dong with a completely new emotion. Jian Chen and Ming Dong gave each other a mutual look before the both of them sat down on stools to watch the rest of the matches. At this moment, Qinji walked up to Ming Dong with a respectful posture. Congratulations to brother Ming Dong for becoming one of the top 10. With your strength, getting into the top 3 will not be an impossible task. With a laugh, Ming Dong began to speak to Qinji for a little while. As the two talked, the finals continued with the usual marvelousness, but after the match between Ming Dong and Ka Jaffe, nothing could compare to their beautiful clash. Thus, every match after did not seem as exciting. After the 8 matches had been concluded, 8 winners were established. Aridia, Zar, Jianchen, Ming Dong, Bailey Tong, Karaga, and Zhang Sun Yunfeng. Much to the shock of Jianchen, the wind attributed Earth's Saint Master that he had came across before while hunting for tokens had made it into the top 8, Zhang Sun Yunfeng. After the top 8 had been established, Zhu and Tianmu Ling had managed to make their way back into the top 10 after winning the losers bracket. At last, the 10 names of the contestants were complete. Aridia, Zar, Jianchen, Ming Dong, Qinji, Bailey Tong, Karaga, Zhang Sun Yunfeng, Zhu and Tianmu Ling. Afterward, the competition prepared to move forward. The tournament would not end until the king of mercenaries was found. Only the top 8 contestants would be able to compete, as well as Tianmu Ling and Zhu, who had both made the 9th and 10th spots. The 8 people began to pick their numbers so that an announcement could be made. Then the announcement came: Jianchen versus Karaga. Ming Dong versus Zhang Sun Yunfeng. Qinji versus Zar. Aridia versus Bailey Tong. The final rounds would be held 3 days later, as each competitor went into a special inn prepared for them to rest. The entire inn was protected by a barrier so that only the competitors could enter. At the same time, they couldn't exit the barrier. All of the inn workers were trusted aides of Mercenary City. During those 3 days, Jianchen spent the majority of his time ensuring that his body would be in peak condition. After that, he took out the Duanyun sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain to inspect them. After fiddling with them for half a day, he had came to a final conclusion. He would not be able to use either ruler armaments, and even if he were to use his own Saint Force to force it into them, it would be eliminated. The seal of Treasure Mountain was as the 4 brothers of the Kai family said. Jianchen would not be able to use it, and the seal of Treasure Mountain was nothing more than a broken piece of iron in his hands. Could it be that the words of those 4 were true? A ruler armament requires the right bloodline in order to be used? Jianchen thought as he eyed the item. This was the only explanation that made sense to him. Afterward, Jianchen placed both ruler armaments back into his space ring and began his study of the illusionary flash. In the past few days, the 4 brothers of the Kai family had already relayed the news of Shi Xiangran's death by Jianchen's hands, as well as the capture of the ruler armament to the Shi family. The very moment the Shi family heard the news, the family head was shocked beyond relief and grew angrier by the second. Even though Shi Xiangran was the 3rd son, his cultivation talent was far beyond everyone else. He was an outstanding person that appeared once in a millennia. For hours after receiving the news, 2 Heaven Saint Masters were dispatched to Mercenary City. Chapter 336. 2 moves. 3 days went by in a flash. Every competitor had their bodies in peak condition for the finals. Outside of the barrier, there was a lot of chatter and many discussions on who would be the winner, causing people to start to bet. Every single one of the gamblers wanted to win big, so the overall sum was well over 10 million purple coins. However, most of the bets were on Ming Dong being the winner, while everyone else had a tenth of the votes. By the afternoon, Mercenary City was completely filled. The amount of people that came here today was quite a bit more than the amount from the previous days, causing all of the streets that led to the plaza to be completely congested. Jianchen and Karaga both stood in the opposite ends of the arena while giving fierce looks at each other. "Brat, you and that Ming Dong seem quite close. Ming Dong has killed my brother Ka. Today, I shall spill your blood as a sacrifice to Ka Jaffe's soul." Then, Ming Dong will have his turn to accompany you. Karaga glared at Jianchen. Jianchen snorted as he gave a small smirk. Your brother Ka Jiafei and Ming Dong had said similar words to each other, and in the end, Ka Jiafei was split in two by Ming Dong. Today, your words scare me just as much as Ka Jiafei's words scared Ming Dong. You will see that the person who falls today will be you. Do you think yourself as Ming Dong? The fact that Ming Dong is a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master is something that I did not expect, and neither did I think that he had such a strong heaven-tier battle skill. Ka Jiafei's death at Ming Dong's hands was not wrong, but are you also a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master? If you are one, then I, Karaga, will immediately admit defeat and kowtow my head thrice. Karaga sneered with disdain. With an impassive look, Jianchen replied, there is no need for you to know my strength. Just know that you need not kowtow because you will not leave here alive. Remember that each and every word of yours comes at a heavy price. With that, Jianchen's killing intent began to leak out from him. With a cold smile, Karaga began to exude his own killing intent, but not another word was spoken. Begin! A loud voice called out into the barrier. A silver-white two-handed sword that was 2 meters long appeared in Karaga's hand, flickering with a faint white glow that made it seem almost holy. At the same time, Jianchen's light wind sword could be seen materializing in his own right hand. Holding it in front of him, Jianchen spoke, if you have that strange armor, then you would best put it on or risk losing the chance to later. At this, Karaga's face grew hot with fury. In the past, no matter where he went, he had been respected and revered by all. However, today, he had been scorned by a single youth no older than the age of 20. For the high and mighty Karaga, he could not bear this. With an angry roar, he yelled, it seems as if you don't even know how to write the character for death. There is no need for me to use the Radiant Saint armor against you. Die. With that, he flew at Jianchen and swung out with his giant longsword with all the power a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master could muster. Karaga's strength could equal Ming Dong's own despite him being a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. Jianchen stared icily at Karaga as an azure and violet light appeared on his light wind sword, causing the silver light on the blade to intensify. The very moment Qin Ji and Tianmu Ling saw the light, their eyes immediately zoned in on Jianchen's sword. To be accurate, the light on the light wind sword was quite eye-catching, and they couldn't help but remember what had happened back in the Immortals' Cave. Jianchen had easily shattered the barriers of Shixiangran and Jiedo Wukong with that very light. Right now they suddenly remembered that Jianchen was using those same lights. The azure and violet sword chi was quite weak now, but because of the silver glow from the light wind sword, the azure and violet sword chi was quite noticeable and eye-catching. Karaga noticed the sudden azure and violet sword chi, but whatever purpose it served he did not care to take notice. Instead he carried on to slash at Jianchen's waist. At the same time, Jianchen took action as well as the light wind sword clashed with Karaga's own sword with a violent crash. Bang! A wild explosion burst out of the two saint weapons, but because Karaga's saint weapon was much stronger than Jianchen, the sword chi on the light wind sword had been scattered for the most part. A kaleidoscopic picture of sword chi flew out and impacted against the barrier without a single scratch on it before the sword chi disappeared from reality. Although Jianchen's sword had most of its sword chi scattered, the azure and violet sword chi was not affected. Just as those two and Karaga's radiant saint force made contact, Karaga's sword became like a rotten piece of wood that instantly chipped away as the light wind sword left behind a 2-finger-wide hole in it. Feeling the damage from his saint weapon, Karaga stifled a shout as his face went white and he spat out some blood. Mere seconds after Jianchen's sword had smashed against Karaga's sword, Jianchen continued up with a second strike with his sword in a split second. While the strike had only been for a moment, the power and speed in which it had struck out was inconceivable. Karaga could feel the damage done to his saint weapon with a shocked expression. As the azure and violet sword chi flashed in between his eyes again, he immediately remembered his surroundings and quickly increased the distance between him and Jianchen. However, Jianchen had somehow managed to get behind Karaga while holding his sword in an elegant-like position without moving. Outside of the arena, Everyone began to point wildly at the scene with loud chattering of amazement at the initial strike. Who do you think will win? Of course it'll be Karaga. It's definitely Karaga. I've heard that he and Kajafei are extremely close. Even Kajafei was a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master. Karaga's strength is definitely just as strong, but I'm not sure if he has a heaven tier battle skill or not. But Jian Chen's strength isn't bad either. He's quite young. What age do you guys think? I would say 20 years old. He couldn't have been cultivating for that long. That's right, Jian Chen couldn't have been cultivating for more than a dozen to 20 years. I can also see that he is an attributeless Saint Force cultivator as well. He cannot compete with Karaga, who is a Radiant Saint Force attributed cultivator. He is also called the Undying by most and is incredibly strong. Who could possibly kill him? Suddenly, the chatter immediately stopped as everyone saw the bright red line on Karaga's neck. The red line began to grow wider before the entire neck seemed to be completely red. Even before the line could become completely red, everyone had already came to the conclusion that the line was blood. Like a water fountain, blood began to spill from Karaga's neck as he fell to the ground. His neck already had a pool of blood forming beneath his body. Then his head rolled away from the body, causing the blood to pour from his neck in a steady stream, covering the entire arena with blood. Outside of the arena, everyone had gone into a mute shock as they stared at the scene in the arena with wide eyes and looks of amazement. For someone strong with a Radiant Saint Force like Karaga, it was unexpected for him to be beheaded by the young-looking Jian Chen as soon as the match had started. This was such a wide gap in skill, everyone found it almost hard to believe. As if ignoring everyone else, the moment the announcement was revealed, Jian Chen walked out of the space gate and into the staging area where everyone was staring at him with wide eyes as if they had no idea whether or not someone was coming back. What a fast sword! For him to stab outward in less than a single second, this type of strength is far too much. It seems that his sword has a secret regarding those two strange lights if it could cut a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master's weapon. A Heaven Saint Master elders spoke in admiration. Leaving the arena, Jian Chen had found it hard to contain his excitement. This wasn't excitement from winning, but excitement from seeing his azure and violet sword chi growing in strength once more. Though everyone had seen the glows. Jian Chen had been able to behead Karaga, so Ming Dong naturally congratulated him. The other competitors' outlook on Jian Chen had now changed by a lot. They all replaced Karaga with him as the number one person here. Everyone had a strange fear of him now, almost as if he were a bigger threat than Ming Dong. Jian Chen's beheading slash of Karaga took less than a second, practically faster than a thunderclap. Even they hadn't seen what had transpired inside the arena since Jian Chen's speed was just far too fast for them to notice. Chapter 337. The finals. The next fight was between Ming Dong and Zhang Sun Yunfeng. After a short break, the arena was back to normal, allowing Ming Dong to enter via the space gate. However, before he could cross through, Jian Chen pulled him aside and with a sharp glance toward Zhang Sun Yunfeng, spoke a few words of warning. With a clench of his fist, a spark of killing intent could be seen in Ming Dong's eyes as he spoke. "Don't worry, Brother Qin Shao has been kind to us. I, Ming Dong, will take revenge for him." With that, he stalked into the arena. Zhang Sun Yunfeng was a middle-aged man who looked quite refined, almost as if he was a wise scholar. His eyes wavered when he saw Jian Chen and Ming Dong talking together as his heart began to beat faster. With some hesitation, he finally gritted his teeth and strode into the arena with his head held high. Quickly, both combatants entered the arena with Ming Dong staring at Zhang Sun Yunfeng with a look that held none of his killing intent back. This caused Zhang Sun Yunfeng to feel a bit startled before taking on a more serious look. He and Jian Chen already had a small conflict in the past, and Jian Chen and Ming Dong were on good terms with each other, allowed him to deduce from these two facts that Jian Chen had asked Ming Dong to eliminate him. "Begin!" the announcer cried out. Without hesitation, after hearing the announcement, he disappeared without a single trace and flew at Zhang Sun Yunfeng in an instant. "I admit defeat." A mere moment after the match had started, Zhang Sun Yunfeng cried out immediately. He had personally seen Ming Dong and Ka Zhafei's fight for himself and knew that Ming Dong's strength was not something that he himself could be an opponent of. Ming Dong had no intention of sparing Zhang Sun Yunfeng and instantly reappeared right in front of him with his saint force exploding out from his body as he lashed out with his sword. At the same time, a powerful sword appeared and pressed against Zhang Sun Yunfeng's body, causing him to feel as if he was stuck in a quagmire and could not move. Earth Tear battle skill. Zhang Sun Yunfeng spoke in shock. He had no idea that Ming Dong would have such an attack and would be so familiar with the skill that he could use it straight away. Ming Dong's sword came slamming down onto Zhang Sun Yunfeng's head with a domineering pressure and speed that had rendered him unable to defend or even move against Ming Dong's attack. At the same time, the barrier came crashing down like a curtain from the heavens, separating Ming Dong and Zhang Sun Yunfeng from each other. Ming Dong's strike crashed against the barrier with a resounding bang, but the energy from the shock wave was absorbed into the barrier like a pebble in the ocean without a single trace of damage. When one of the combatants admits defeat, then the other combatant is forbidden from making any further attacks. Ming Dong is the winner. A loud voice boomed out as two space gates opened up on both sides. Staring vehemently at Zhang Sun Yunfeng, Ming Dong let out a helpless sigh before walking back to his space gate dejectedly. With his own sigh of relief, Zhang Sun Yunfeng was extremely grateful for the last-second protection against Ming Dong. If it were not for that, then he would have been killed by Ming Dong's attack and would not live to see himself walk out of the arena. Zhang Sun Yunfeng stared in fear at the retreating back of Ming Dong before walking himself sadly back to his own space gate. He had spent 40 long years cultivating so that he could attain such a strong power, but he hadn't thought that some youth under the age of 30 would have been able to force him into such a miserable state. The next match was between Qin Ji and Czar. Although Qin Ji had a ruler armament, he could not use it in this match because of the barrier placed onto him being restricted. The match was extremely short since Qin Ji was incapable of hurting Czar with his Radiant Saint armor, leaving Czar as the winner. The final round was between Aridia and Bailey Tong. Both of them were well-built men. Bailey Tong had the strength of a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master. The fight lasted an hour before, finally, Bailey Tong managed to strike at Adiria for the win. Thus, the 4 strongest had been established: Jianqin, Ming Dong, Czar, and Bailey Tong. After a day of rest, the final started straight away. With the matches being determined, the list of names had been released. What caused both Ming Dong and Jianqin to feel gloomy was that they had been pitted against each other at last. Czar had been paired up against Bailey Tong, who had a ruler armament as well. In the arena, Jianqin and Ming Dong both stared at each other helplessly. Luck had played with them and the heavens had pulled one final joke at their expense. This day would end with the final 2 strongest being established. If Jianqin and Ming Dong hadn't been pitted against each other, then there would have been a good chance for them to be 1st and 2nd place. Because of the will of the heavens, one of the 2 men would be eliminated. Begin! The announcer called out, but not a single person made a move. Ming Dong, you are quite strong, so I trust that you will be able to be number 1, don't disappoint me. Jianqin spoke. He had every intention to admit defeat here. He knew in his heart that if he did not use his azure and violet sword Qi, he would not be an opponent for Ming Dong at all. After all, Ming Dong was a wind-attributed 6th cycle Earth Saint Master and had a better comprehension of the illusionary flash. Compared to Ming Dong, Jianqin had no chance of winning. I admit defeat. Just as Jianqin opened his mouth to admit defeat, Ming Dong beat him to it. Seeing the amazed look on Jianqin's face, Ming Dong laughed. Jianqin, your strength isn't any weaker than mine. I believe that you can grab the 1st place, so don't you dare disappoint me. With a forced smile, Jianqin replied, Ming Dong, you becoming 1st place is not a difficult task. Why did you give me the chance to do so instead? Because you need it more. Jianqin, Uncle Tian told me that whoever is 1st place within the gathering of the mercenaries will be able to cultivate in the holy grounds of Mercenary City for half a year. Jianqin, you know that I am already at the peak of the 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. At any given time, I can make the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master, so the holy grounds is of no use to me. You on the other hand, are in a different situation. Ming Dong spoke seriously. Smiling more freely now, Jianqin said, Then fine Ming Dong. Since you have given me the chance, I won't dare let you down now. Congratulations on your win." Ming Dong laughed. What Ming Dong didn't know was that when he had conceded the match, countless of people howled out in anger and cursed. That was because everyone had bet on Ming Dong being the number one person in the competition. When they had placed all their bets on Ming Dong and now witnessed him admit defeat, the money they had spent was thrown away. The final conclusion between Jian Chen and Ming Dong had been far beyond what anyone had expected. Only those who had some familiarity with the two had a look of smugness on their faces. They knew that Ming Dong and Jian Chen had been with each other for some time, and while they knew that Ming Dong was extremely strong, he had always treated Jian Chen as the leader, almost as if he was the boss. The millions of people within Mercenary City began to talk among themselves as everyone that had bet on Ming Dong felt extremely dissatisfied. It was only until a Heaven Saint Master commented that Jian Chen himself was not weak at all and had proved it when he beheaded Karaga in an instant. After that, anyone who had expressed their dissatisfaction at Ming Dong's defeat grew quiet. For those who had placed a large sum of money on Ming Dong, they could only drop their heads and wallow in their sadness. No matter how loud the chatter was, not a single person within the arena could hear it because of the soundproofing characteristic of the barrier, so Ming Dong and Jian Chen had not heard a single word. Afterward, Czar and Bailey Tong stepped into the arena. Czar had already reached the 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master level and had a small repertoire of strong battle skills. Bailey Tong was only at a 4th Cycle Earth Saint Master strength but had a ruler armament, yet this would not be very effective against the Radiant Saint armor of Czar. With Czar also being able to heal himself with his Radiant Saint force, the battle did not take long with the Radiant Warrior Czar being the winner. The final round of the competition and the most important one would take place the following day. Because this was the final battle, it would give rise to the strongest individual of the gathering of the mercenaries and would be given the honor of being called the King of Mercenaries. During the following day of rest, Jian Chen disregarded the break and put all of his efforts into comprehending the illusionary flash. He had already attained the first layer of mastery with the Heaven's Stolen Fortune and could increase his strength 3 times over. This was already a pleasing result to Jian Chen, so he did not need to worry anymore on studying the Heaven's Stolen Fortune since it would be impossible for him to make the second layer in such a short amount of time. Even if he were to somehow gain mastery of the second layer, his fighting strength would not be all that much different in relativity since his strength would only be multiplied by 4 times. Even with his 1st Cycle Earth Saint Master strength multiplied by 4, it would not be able to contend against a Heaven Saint Master. Rather than that outcome, Jian Chen threw all of his time and effort towards studying the illusionary flash. He was not focusing on getting first place of the gathering of the mercenaries since he had a great deal of confidence in getting it already. What Jian Chen truly did fear was the Jetta clan and Sher family. He could anticipate that the moment he left Mercenary City, there would be experts from both powers coming to kill him and take back the ruler armaments. The grudges between him and the two powers would never be dissolved since he was far too weak. Chapter 338. Czar's condition. The next day, countless people waited for the finals to finally start. This was the day that the King of Mercenaries would be established. The bicentennial gathering of the mercenaries was finally coming to a close. The news of Czar fighting against Jian Chen had been the focus of everyone's banter. Even several Heaven Saint Masters had personally came to watch the fight before trying to predict who would win. In the end, the final conclusion was that the two men were not that different in strength. Czar was over the age of 45, but also below the age 50 with the strength of a 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master and had the Radiant Saint Force. Because of that, he was called the Undying by many since he could heal any injury he might receive. His natural advantages were plenty and he was as complex as the two other Radiant Warriors from before. Neither audience nor combatants knew of his battle skills except for the exceptionally strong armor he had. However, many people speculated that he had a single Heaven-tier battle skill at the very least. Jian Chen was most likely above the age of 20 and below the age of 25 with the strength of a 1st or 2nd Cycle Earth Saint Master. He had no known attributed Saint Force, but his strikes were incredibly deadly. His sword was incredibly fast and could make it hard for a 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master to dodge. Moreover, he could maintain that speed for a long period of time without feeling the side effects of this supernatural movement. And because of some sort of martial arts, his movements were incredibly fast. He had no known battle skill, but he had a single hidden secret that could shatter the saint weapon of a sixth cycle Earth Saint Master. When he utilizes the azure and violet glows of light, his fighting strength was suddenly multiplied, and many people speculated that this was definitely a heaven-tier battle skill. When information regarding the two's strength had been revealed, everyone immediately took notice, and within the same day people began to gamble once more. Because this was the final round, every single gambler had placed high stakes on the match. Many of the wealthier men had wagered hundreds of thousands of purple coins on the two, making the pot of the entire bet count up to over 100 million purple coins. Because of the ambiguity over the two combatants' strength, there were people that looked at Jianchen favorably and people who looked at Czar favorably for an almost equal outcome. Half the people had bet on Jianchen, the other half had bet on Czar. How lively! I would like to bet 100,000 purple coins on brother Jianchen to win it all. Tianmu Ling took out the appropriate sum of money to hand it over. I too would like to bet on brother Jianchen's victory, 500,000 purple coins. Qin Ji strode forward and took out the money from his space belt. I'd like to bet 1,000 purple coins on Jianchen, that's all I have. Senior and brought out a smaller stack of money onto the table. 30,000 purple coins on Jianchen, all of my personal wealth rests upon Jianchen's shoulders. Qin Shao spoke out in a grand voice. 10,000 purple coins on Jianchen. Dugu Feng wasn't one to be left behind and spoke to the one taking the bets with a calm look. In the arena, Jianchen and Czar both stood quietly across from each other. Jianchen stood in carefree manner in front of Czar with his sword in hand, the point of the sword resting on the ground, yet a piercing stare was honed in on Czar. Czar was a sturdily built man who was about 2 meters tall and had a chilling stare as he looked at Jianchen. He had come fully prepared by wearing his silver-colored armor where wisps of radiant saint force could be seen revolving around it, basking the area around him in a glowing light and giving him the appearance of a holy person. The only place that had not been covered by the armor were the two spots where his eyes were. Holding his bright saint weapon above his head, the armored Czar looked like a revered war god. The two had already stood in the arena for some time before instantly bursting into action as the announcer made the call. Suddenly, the war god-like Czar spoke from within his silver armor. Jianchen, although you are using some sort of special method to hide your presence, I can tell that your saint force is not far away from my own. With your young age, I am sure that with time, you will reach the peak of the Tianyuan continent. So in this battle, whether I win or lose, I hope that we will remain friends and not enemies. Jianchen was slightly shocked after hearing those words, but he stared at Czar with a strange look. We've killed your comrades Karaga and Ka Zhafei, did you not wish to avenge them? Even under the helmet, there seemed to be no difference in his emotion as Czar spoke calmly. I admit, Karaga and Ka Zhafei both came from the same place as I, but our affiliations are with a different power. We are not friends, but instead competitors. Our relationship with each other is quite subtle, and if it was any worse, then it would have become hostile. With you and Ming Dong killing the both of them, I should thank you. In fact, you've eliminated potential enemies in my future. Czar let out a long sigh. This triple entente between the three of us has gone on for too long. Perhaps, it was time for it to be smashed apart. Czar said before speaking once more, Jianchen, no matter how this battle goes, I truly hope that we will remain friends. Jianchen's eyes flashed with a strange light. He knew that this was an unknown situation where he was at great risks of being dragged into a terrible battleground. With some thought, Jianchen said, I can only say that we will not be enemies. As for friends, that cannot be easily done with so few words. Czar nodded his head. That is true enough. If just saying these words were enough for two strangers to become friends, then the value of friendship would be absolutely worthless. Jianchen, I know that you are determined to be first place, but do you have the strength to overcome me? Jianchen's eyes flashed with a strange look as he tried to understand what Czar was trying to get at, but he opened his mouth and replied anyways, partially. Czar laughed. It seems that you have confidence in yourself. With that, Zar took out his long sword and then another silver-bladed sword from within his space ring. Jianchen, if I were to use this saint weapon, how sure are you that you will be able to beat me? Jianchen took a look at the new weapon in Zar's hand with a bright stare. If my guess is correct, that is a ruler armament. Without any other words, Zar laughed once more. Correct, this is a ruler armament. Jianchen, if I were to use this, then how sure are you that you would be able to beat me? Jianchen stayed mysteriously silent, giving no reply. Continuing to speak, Zar said, Jianchen, you must know that just the two of us reaching this step was not easy. The requirements for the gathering of the mercenaries didn't allow many of the geniuses born at the wrong time to participate, so no matter if it is you or me that desires first place, we both will not easily renounce it. With our strength being so close to each other, we will have to fight with all our power to attain first place, and since we must defeat the other in order to become first, I will indeed try my best. Zar suddenly stopped his speech to look at Jianchen for a brief moment. But if you could agree to my request, I will renounce my attempt and give you the spot of first place. Hearing this, Jianchen kept a calm look on his face, but his mind instantly began to think back to the first words that Zar had said. In a flash, he had came to a conclusion that there would be a possibility for him to be involved in a clash between major powers. Zar's condition was quite alluring, but for such an alluring condition, there would definitely be an equally heavy price to pay for it. Zar must have seen Jianchen's potential as well as the relationship he had with Ming Dong, or greatly desired to have the support of the powers behind the both of them. Whichever the situation was, Jianchen would definitely not want to agree to him. My apologies, but I believe that this battle should be won using our own strengths, not words. Jianchen spoke calmly with a neutral expression. Jianchen, did you not even want to hear what my request was? Sir, there is no need. Jianchen replied. Jianchen, this is your chance to become first place. I'm not afraid to tell you, but I am in possession of a middle heaven tier battle skill and a ruler armament. Did you think you could beat me? Zar asked. Jianchen had a deep smile on his face as he replied, Zar, if you cannot hit me, then the ruler armament in your hand has no use. As for the heaven tier battle skill, while they are indeed powerful, they require time to employ. If you dare try to initialize your heaven tier battle skill, then I can guarantee that you will not be able to release it. My sword will strike at your throat. If it were not for the helmet on Zar's face, then the facial change would have been noticeable to everyone. He stared blankly at Jianchen for a moment before laughing for a good while. This was the first time he had ever thought his words had been so useless and suffered so much by the younger generation. After a short period of time, Zar let out a sigh as he stared at Jianchen in thought. If only my son was as remarkable as you, that would be great. Even if I were to reduce my life by 100 years, if not 1,000 or even 10,000 years, I would agree. Jianchen was speechless. Chapter 339. The Soul Sword. Once more, the moment Ming Dong saw the ruler armament in Zar's hand from the outside, his face grew startled. Crap, I didn't think he would have a ruler armament. His secret was cleverly hidden until now. This will be troublesome to see if Jianchen will be able to beat him. The next moment, the two fighters spared no more words and waited for the match to officially start. 2 hours had passed, and if Zar hadn't made a move, then Jianchen would have thought that the match had long since started. He hadn't heard the call, but the time he had waited was already far too long. He had came here in the morning, and now it was almost noon. The blazing hot sun was already high in the air, and its hot golden light rays bore down, basking the entire area with a golden color. Despite the sun blazing overhead, not a single person felt the heat. It was already winter in season, so the temperature was not unbearable. Only a few really noticed the sunlight's heat, but they thought it to be more comfortable than not, unlike summer heat which everyone came to hate. It is now the 3rd hour, let the competition begin. Suddenly, the voice of the announcer could be heard. Hearing this, Jianchen almost felt like spitting out blood. He had no idea that he and Zar would be standing around like idiots until the 1st hour past the start of the afternoon for the match to begin. Tie. On the other side, Zar had already burst into motion as his radiant saint force exploded away from him. With his ruler armament high in the air with a divine-like radiance, his entire person seemed equally divine in spirit, making him seem like a war god. As the ruler armament was waved in the air, a large amount of sword chi suddenly flew out toward Jianchen like a crescent moon. Its power was so strong that even while flying through the air, the crescent-shaped sword chi began to distort. For a sixth cycle Earth Saint Master to wield a ruler armament, the amount of energy that would be released would be much more than Dugufeng. The crescent-shaped sword chi flew at Jianchen, who was instantly torn apart, allowing the attack to continue on. It exploded against the barrier where it disappeared like a pebble within the ocean. Seeing how Jianchen had been smashed apart by the crescent sword chi, the entire audience all gasped in shock and amazement. However, the cries were all cut short as they realized it had only been a mirror image of Jianchen that had been hit. The real one suddenly reappeared behind Czar with his light wind sword glowing with a faint azure and violet sword chi before stabbing at his back. Czar didn't even bother to turn around and immediately swung his ruler armament behind him. The energy from the ruler armament burst outward with a shaking sensation, almost as if the area around it could not handle the energy output. Growing serious at the blow, Jianchen could feel that the amount of power Czar had while using the ruler armament was far stronger than that of Qinji and Dugufeng by a good amount. Jianchen wouldn't be able to handle a fraction of the ruler armament's power, let alone the entire force of it. Taking back his sword, Jianchen immediately used the illusionary flash and left behind a mirror image for the ruler armament to attack while reappearing behind Czar to stab at him with his azure and violet sword chi once more. Without even moving to dodge Jianchen's blow, Czar brandished his ruler armament so that his ruler armament would strike Jianchen. Jianchen had been fearful of Czar's ruler armament. He knew just how strong the azure and violet sword chi were, but the ruler armament was not Czar's saint weapon. Even if he were able to shatter the ruler armament, it would not diminish Czar's fighting ability too much. For the sake of his own safety, he had to take back his strike once more and dodge the ruler armament. The two men continued to go at each other in a fierce exchange of blows that never connected as they dodged, making the fight seem almost silent. Czar knew that Jianchen's speed was far too fast, so he hadn't tried to dodge Jianchen's attacks and instead tried to meet the blows head for head. His ruler armament was brandished in a wide area so that Jianchen would be forced to pull back his own sword at the last moment to avoid collision. Jianchen was already utilizing the illusionary flash to the best of his ability and traveled in a circle around Czar rapidly. In less than a few moments, the two men had exchanged multiple strikes with not a single person being able to do a thing to the other. The formidable amount of power coming from Czar's ruler armament struck fear into Jianchen's heart. He also knew that he didn't dare risk for a mutually assured destruction with Czar because he wasn't sure if the ruler armament would be able to cut him in half. With the amount of power that was exuding from the ruler armament, he didn't want to test it out. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in Jianchen's eyes as he dashed backward while stabbing at Czar with the azure and violet sword chi-infused light wind sword in every position. The armor that Czar was wearing was strong enough that even Ming Dong would normally be helpless against it. Jianchen's regular strikes wouldn't be enough to dent it, so he needed to borrow the power of the azure and violet sword chi. With an angry shout, Czar brought his ruler armament up close to him so that the light wind sword would be useless against it and scatter all of the sword chi away. Jianchen, doubt that I would be unable to deal with this situation. He snorted before revealing an eye full of rage that made it seem as if they contained fire instead. In an instant, the light wind sword separated from his hand and transformed into a silver ray of light that shot toward Czar with impeccable speed. The light wind sword seemed to have almost reached the speed of light, making it almost impossible for anyone to see. At this moment, Jianchen was using most of his soul to utilize the soul sword. The flight of the light wind sword would have astounded the entire audience to a new level if seen by them, even as the sword began to conceal itself within a faint mist. Ding! Before Czar could even react, the light wind sword had already struck against his armor, but because Jianchen had underestimated just how strong the defenses were, the sword had only left behind a small trace of damage. Although Czar had suffered no injuries, The light wind sword had still traveled at an incredible speed and pushed him back a few steps with a large amount of force. The moment he had seen the silver streak of light, his face instantly slackened with shock as he cried out, "Just how is this possible? Just what did you use to hit me?" Because of Jian Chen's efforts, the light wind sword had flew at a speed and direction that made it impossible for Zar to take notice, so he was completely unaware of what had been used to hit him. Jian Chen ignored Zar's surprised outcry and slowly closed his eyes, to sense the existence of his light wind sword. Using his spirit to control the light wind sword, he and the sword achieved a harmonized state of mind. He was the sword, and the sword was he. The two beings were one and not two. Just as Jian Chen had delved into this state of mind, the azure and violet sword spirits suddenly began to shake within his dantian. The multicolored stone also began to shake as if it were extremely happy, like an overly excited child. Ding 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 ding. A series of echoes could be heard as Zar's body continued to dance in a strange motion. With each step he took, he was driven back so that he staggered in a new direction each second. Several times, he was on the verge of falling to the ground. It was evident to see that he was in a bad position. On his armor, a chain of firework-like sparks could be seen as they lit up his radiant saint armor and left several impressions in it. Just what in the world is happening? What trickery is this? Zar cried out in shock and anger. Jian Chen and his sword were now one, and with him placing all of his strength on controlling the light wind sword, its speed was practically invisible to the naked eye. Even though Zar was being constantly assaulted by strikes, he couldn't see just what was hitting him. The light wind sword continued to rain down on Zar's body with an unbelievable amount of strength. Each strike rocked his body, making him unsteady. At last, Zar stabbed his ruler armament into the ground to anchor his position while allowing the invisible strikes to continue to pelter him unobstructed. His radiant saint armor was valiantly durable and was comparable to even Shi Xiangran's defensive barrier. No matter how many strikes hit him, they did no damage to him at all. Just what in the heavens is this? Zar stared in bafflement toward the immobile Jian Chen. He had no idea how many times he had spoken those words now, but it went without saying that he was extremely curious to know just what trickery Jian Chen was doing. Outside of the arena, every single person gasped in shock with their eyes wide open as they watched the show happening right in front of them. All they could see was the stationary Jian Chen, who seemed like a stone statue, and Zar, who was 20 meters away with his ruler armament stabbed deep into the ground. His hands were clenched onto the ruler armament while a series of sparks flashed across his armor. This strange show left everyone absolutely mystified on how exactly this situation came to be and what was causing it. Chapter 340. The Holy Land. The spectating Qin Ji had a strange look of puzzlement on his face as he observed the two men. Just what are they doing? It seems Zar is being assaulted by attacks in an endless stream, but I don't see where they're coming from. Also, the sword from Jian Chen's hand is missing. Jian Chen is quite definitely a strange one, someone far more mysterious than I had initially thought. Even Qin Ji was incapable of spotting the light wind sword since the speed it was traveling at was beyond what he could detect with his naked eye, meaning that he could only see the sparks flying off Zar's armor without know just how Jian Chen was involved. On the other side, Ming Dong looked on with some relief at the sight of Zar being showered with sparks. With a small smile, he muttered, "It is no wonder that he is a brother of mine. He is quite special. It seems that in this case, it won't be much longer until Zar loses. To think I was worrying over this fight for nothing. Oh, little brother seems to have hidden such a mysterious thing, for him to force the ruler armament-wielding Zar to eat up such a loss. I bet that Zar would have died a long time ago if it were not for his armor. However, how did little brother get so much strength? Since it is an attack that is invisible to everyone, it is not that easy to defend against. I can tell that being an opponent of his would not be a smart choice." Tianmu Ling stared at the arena with eyes that flashed with wonder. Even the yellow-robed Huang Wan was staring at Jian Chen with a dazed look. Her expression was exceptionally complex. Her mind couldn't help but think back to the first time she had met Jian Chen, that awkward meeting at the river. She then thought about when she saw him during the survival competition. Are you really the same man as before? Huang Luan wondered absent-mindedly as she looked at Jian Chen and muttered to herself. She could clearly remember a few years back Jian Chen was not worthy of being her opponent and wasn't capable of dealing any damage to her. She had no idea that after some time, she would meet the much stronger Jian Chen who could outmatch her by a long distance. In the arena, Czar held his ground tenaciously as he clutched at his ruler armament with great force as he shouted, "Jian Chen, you cannot harm me while my radiant saint armor is up, so don't waste your energy. While I don't know just how you are doing this, I do know that you won't be able to keep it up for long. Just wait until your energy runs out, then you will lose." As if he hadn't heard Czar's roar, Jian Chen continued to hold his eyelids shut while twitching his finger. On that finger, a faint glow of azure and violet sword chi could be seen before it was shot straight toward Czar. At the moment Czar's movements were restricted, forcing him to brace himself with the ruler armament to withstand the attacks. Therefore, he wasn't able to move whatsoever and could only watch as the azure and violet sword chi drew closer to him. Seeing the azure and violet sword chi, Czar felt himself starting to panic. Although he had confidence in his radiant saint armor and his strength as a 6th cycle earth saint master with a heaven-tier battle skill, he couldn't help but think back to when this very sword chi had damaged Karaga's saint weapon. For the very first time, Czar felt doubt appear in his heart. Could his radiant saint armor's defenses be destroyed by this azure and violet sword chi? Even as he had that fleeting thought for a mere moment, the azure and violet sword chi continued on, flying straight at his chest. Without a sound, a small hole suddenly opened up in his armor as the azure and violet sword chi carved a hole into his body. With a grunt, Czar could feel his body starting to shake. The moment the azure and violet sword chi entered his body, it had begun to bounce around inside. Each and every moment, Czar could feel that his organs were one step closer to being completely damaged to pieces. Ah! Czar let out a heaven-piercing roar as the veins in his forehead suddenly bulged. All of the saint force within his body immediately surged to wrap the azure and violet sword chi in order to eradicate it from his body. While the azure and violet sword chi was weak, its power was still enough to cause Czar to be incredibly fearful. He used all of his saint force to intervene, but not only did it fail, the azure and violet sword chi continued to wreck his inner organs. As the azure and violet sword chi bounced around Czar's insides, it continued to whittle away at his chance to live. Not only was a man's interior body their weakest point, it was also the most fatal area. With the azure and violet sword chi destroying his insides, in less than a few breaths, Czar had already suffered several serious injuries. Just what in the world is this force? Who hurry up and take it back, take back this force. Czar had a terrified look on his face as he cried out to Jian Chen. At this moment, the azure and violet sword chi was bouncing for his heart, and if it were to get too close, then his heart would be instantly shredded apart like tofu. Even a radiant warrior would not be able to survive an injury like that. A faint streak of silver light appeared within Jian Chen's hand as he slowly opened his eyes, revealing a tired expression. With a sudden sway of his body, he flashed in front of the beaten Czar and placed his palm against Czar's chest. The very moment Jian Chen placed his palm against Czar's chest, the azure and violet sword chi that was causing havoc inside his chest instantly turned docile like a sheep. Just like how an obedient child would behave, it slowly moved out of Czar's chest and into Jian Chen's palm where it blended in with the sword spirits within Jian Chen's dantian. Feeling the presence of the azure and violet sword chi dissipate from his body, Czar let out a sigh of relief before staring at Jian Chen with a frightened voice. Just what in the world was that force? It was so strong that it easily managed to shatter my radiant saint armor. He quavered. Czar, I've won this battle. Jian Chen spoke with a smile. Knowing that Jian Chen would not talk anymore about the strange azure and violet sword chi, he decided not to talk anymore about the subject and nodded his head sadly. You've won indeed. With that, the radiant saint armor on Czar's body began to disappear from sight. It was only at this point that Czar's face could be seen, a deathly white color. The clothes that he wore underneath the armor had already been dyed a bloody red from the attack of the azure and violet sword chi. At that moment, the barrier that had been surrounding the arena suddenly disappeared. The elder who had been announcing the competition suddenly spoke in a loud and grandiose voice so that everyone in Mercenary City could hear. I declare as of this moment, there is finally a victor to the gathering of the mercenaries. With Jian Chen as the winner, he will also be crowned the king of mercenaries and will be awarded with the glorious medal of our mercenary city. He will also be awarded with an advanced heaven tier battle skill and cultivation method. Furthermore, he will also be able to enter the holy grounds to cultivate for half a year, and if his mercenary group is not already A-ranked, then it will be automatically promoted to such a rank. Hearing the announcer's judgment, Ming Dong finally let out a deep breath of joy as Qin Shao and the others cheered while Senior and hugged everyone in excitement. The gathering of the mercenaries rewarded the first-place person quite handsomely and even granted the winner with a medal that represented the honor of being the king of mercenaries. Upon hearing the first-place prize of the gathering of the mercenaries, countless of Heaven Saint Masters had looks of envy on their faces. An advanced Heaven tier battle skill was infinitesimally close to a Saint tier battle skill. Not a single one of the Heaven Saint Masters outside of the arena could boast of having an advanced Heaven tier battle skill. Many of them didn't even have any primary Heaven tier battle skills. This was because all of the strongest battle skills were in the possession of the few strongest clans, so any Heaven Saint Masters without a background would already find it challenging to find even a primary Heaven tier battle skill. But right now, an Earth Saint Master kid had somehow managed to claim the #1 spot of the gathering of the mercenaries and obtain a Heaven tier battle skill. Thus, this made many of the older generation cultivators feel an extreme amount of envy for that battle skill. This advanced tier battle skill was far too easy to obtain. I left my home to travel the continent for 100 years, and the only thing I have to show for it is an advanced Earth tier battle skill. Just when will I get a Heaven tier battle skill? A white-haired elder muttered to himself as he stared at Jian Chen with envy. He, too, was a Heaven Saint Master. The Holy Lands, that is the legendary place that is said to house even saint rulers. I bet there would be no shortage of the rumored Saint tier battle skills there, but I don't know if that is true or not. Unfortunately, I have never heard or seen any information regarding it in my entire life. Another Heaven Saint Master sighed. Jian Chen and Czar both walked through the space gate with a brilliant glow as they left. Just as Jian Chen disappeared from the arena, he saw a crane-hairstyled elder standing 5 meters away from him with a smile. It looked as if he had already been waiting for him for some time. Dressed in fine silk clothing, the elder stared at Jian Chen with a faint smile. Jian Chen, congratulations on becoming the king of mercenaries. I will take you to reward you with a Heaven tier battle skill and cultivation method. Please follow me. Then if Senior would lead the way. Jian Chen cupped his hands together and followed the elder toward the armory. On the way, the elder spoke calmly. Jian Chen, the biggest reward of being the king of mercenaries is the Holy Land, not the Heaven tier battle skill. The Holy Land is not only a sacred place to our mercenary city, but to the entire Tianyuan continent. This is where Heaven Saint Masters yearn to be and where saint rulers roam about. You must cherish this opportunity since only saint rulers are allowed entrance. It is only every 50 years that anyone under the rank of a saint ruler can enter, but they must be the king of mercenaries. Chapter 341. Into the armory. Hearing the elder's words, Jian Chen grew even more interested in the Holy Land. He wanted to know just what was inside that made every saint ruler crazy for it. Senior, could it be that the Holy Lands contains one of the legendary saint tier battle skills? Jian Chen couldn't help but ask. The elder only replied with, if the Holy Lands only had a saint tier battle skill, then it was named rashly. There is indeed a saint tier battle skill within, but that is only one piece of the whole. Don't ask any more about the matter, I won't be able to tell you any more. The next step of the path was rather silent as Jian Chen followed the elder to a small pavilion. It was only 100 meters in circumference and was 10 meters tall. The entire building was made from bamboo and had a few scars on its surface, showing the toll time had done to it over the years. On top of the pavilion doors, a simple board was hung above with the word Armory written in fancy calligraphy. Jianchen looked at the pavilion with some shock. He didn't think that such a small pavilion would be where the armory, with the heaven-tier battle skill, would be stored. There seemed to be no sort of security here. This bamboo must not be an ordinary type of bamboo for it to not be rotten after so long. If it wasn't, then there would be no way for it to withstand years of rain and wind. Jianchen thought. The elder who had been leading Jianchen to the pavilion suddenly stopped right in front of the door as he looked at it strangely. This building has existed for countless of years. It was created when the founder of Mercenary City, Mo Tianyun, personally decided to do so. To our mercenary city, this place is a sacred place that is not lesser than the Holy Land. Jianchen immediately felt a sense of veneration for this place as he looked at the building once more in a new light. This building right in front of him had been personally built by Mo Tianyun, and so there was definitely a special meaning to the building. The years have been ruthless. The elder let out a mournful sigh before going silent. Turning to Jianchen, he spoke, "This is where all of the secret manuals are stored. I could only guide you here, the rest will have to rely on you." "I thank the senior." Jianchen cupped his hands. Creak. Suddenly, the doors to the pavilion opened on their own, revealing the dim dark light inside. Another voice could be heard from within. "Jianchen, hurry up and choose your prize. Also, take off your shoes, it is forbidden for dirt to be tracked into the armory." Hearing the warning, Jianchen was momentarily taken back. He hadn't thought that he would have to take off his shoes in order to enter the armory. Although he found the request to be weird, he did not hesitate and placed his shoes on the ground outside before entering the small pavilion. The interior of the armory was exceptionally bright. Not a single speck of dust could be seen on any of the rows of bookshelves. Books weathered with age and simple materials were stacked on each shelves. These shelves themselves were quite mysterious as there was no wear or damage to them. Each one of the books on the various bookshelves were made from the hide of a magical beast, and each were several inches thick in width with pages. Taking a look around, he quickly came to see a gray-robed elder carefully cleaning one of the many bookshelves diligently, as if each book was a treasure that required an earnest cleaning so that no dust would remain. Standing quietly behind him, Jianchen spoke no words to the ordinary-looking elder. By his appearance, the elder seemed as if he was incapable of any type of martial arts, but Jianchen knew that he was no ordinary man. With an armory filled with heaven-tier battle skills, there was no way the guardian to this place would be that simple. Almost as if the elder hadn't sensed Jianchen's arrival, he continued to concentrate wholeheartedly on taking each book out from the bookshelf before carefully cleaning each page. As soon as the book was clean, he would put it back and move on to the next book. The elder did not let Jianchen wait for long. The moment he finished the entire bookshelf, the elder turned about and started to walk toward Jianchen. "This one is Jianchen, I greet the senior." Seeing how the elder was turning toward him, Jianchen hastily cupped his hands together. The elder continued to walk forward without looking at Jianchen for a moment before speaking. "The heaven-tier battle skill is in the upper levels, follow me." "Yes, senior." Jianchen hurriedly followed the elder. "You'd best be careful and not damage any of the items in here." The elder spoke with a calm expression, but there was an unmistakable amount of power radiating from him. Promptly responding to the elder, Jianchen knew that the entire pavilion was filled with things that this elder was especially fond of. If he were to cause just the slightest amount of damage, then there would be a major headache for him. Jianchen carefully followed behind the elderly man through the pavilion. His footsteps were especially light since he didn't dare step too heavily. Not too long later, Jianchen found himself with the elder on the highest-most level. There was only 4 bookshelves here, but each one differed with the amount of books. Some had a few hundred, some had only a few dozen. Suddenly grabbing a thin book, the elder handed it to Jianchen. "This book has descriptions of both heaven-tier battle skills and heaven-tier cultivation methods. Take a look and then take your pick." Taking the book from the elder, Jianchen began to flip through the pages. Indeed, what the elder said was correct. The book was a catalog of every single heaven-tier battle skill or cultivation method. This was especially surprising for Jianchen, since he was able to see hundreds of battle skills and cultivation methods. He became tongue-tied when he began to read through the list. A heaven-tier battle skill was a treasure to the current world. Each one was worth an immeasurable amount of money, but in this armory, heaven-tier battle skills were almost as common as rice. If the sheer amount of these battle skills were to be announced to the world, then the entire continent would be shocked. Senior, with so many heaven-tier battle skills, has no one tried to steal them before? Jianchen asked suddenly. The elder gave a look of disdain as he heard those words, but he refused to say a word. At this point, Jianchen suddenly realized that he had asked an extremely foolish question. Mercenary City had no one that would covet these battle skills and at the same time have the ability to steal them. With no more questions, Jianchen began to look for a heaven-tier battle skill and cultivation method. A moment later, Jianchen finally decided on a battle skill and cultivation method. Without any further words, the elder walked to 2 different bookshelves and took out 2 books before handing them to Jianchen. These are the items you want. Taking the 2 books with quivering hands, Jianchen couldn't believe that the 2 objects that he had just been given were a heaven-tier battle skill and cultivation method. Jianchen had chosen the heaven-tier battle skill called the 9-Cloud Movement. This was a battle skill that anyone could learn and did not require a specific attribute Saint Force or any other strict conditions. The 9-Cloud Movement had a total of 9 forms, with each form many times stronger than the one before. It was rumored that the very final form was capable of breaking the heavens and shaking the world. Leaving the armory, Jianchen followed the elder that guided him earlier back to where they had come from. On the way, the elder spoke to him. The Holy Lands will open in 3 days. By that time, someone will come get you, so it would be best for you not to leave Mercenary City before then. Yes, Senior. Without any further delays, Jianchen and the elder returned to the halls where a single space gate was open for Jianchen to walk through. When he saw this space gate, Jianchen felt a flutter of apprehension in his heart. Could it be that he wasn't in Mercenary City and was actually within a pocket of space? Without any more hesitation, Jianchen crossed through the space gate and found himself back within the plaza of Mercenary City. The only difference now was that the large arena was nowhere to be seen, leaving behind a giant flat piece of ground. The multitude of people that had occupied the area before had long since vacated the area, so not many people were in sight. Despite the competition having only been finished 2 hours ago, the announcements for the top 10 had already been announced by a large white banner in the sky with every one of the top 10 combatants' names written in a fancy manner. The number 1 person was Jianchen with Zar in 2nd place and Ming Dong in 3rd. AI look, the number 1 person from the gathering of the mercenaries, Jianchen. Suddenly, a youth discovered the existence of Jianchen and cried out in excitement. Hearing the youth's shout, everyone in the area suddenly turned around to look at the white-robed Jianchen. Envy, jealousy, and admiration adorned the faces of everyone staring at him, and plenty of pretty, young females didn't bother to hide their eyes of adoration. Jianchen was a handsome person with a handsome face, and so he was definitely a person that could lay claim to a girl's heart with his appearance. Right now, with the glory of being the king of mercenaries along with the recent show of his strength, he had already become the shining white knight for most girls. Chapter 342. The departure of Ming Dong. Separating from the crowd, Jianchen finally managed to get away from the multitude and return to the very first inn he had rested in. Within the tavern, countless of men were chatting while eating their meals. The topics in every single group revolved around the number 1 ranker in the gathering of the mercenaries, Jianchen. Who would have thought that Jianchen would seize the 1st place spot? I've heard he only has a strength around the 1st or 2nd cycle Earth Saint Master level. For him to beat Zar, a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master with a radiant Saint Force, it's almost inconceivable. A middle-aged man with a refined look and a well-educated manner spoke. With a single look, the man could be taken to be a scholar. That's right, I didn't expect to see Jianchen defeat Zar. It cost me 3,000 purple coins. If I had known earlier, then I would have bet on Jianchen. Another dowdy-looking man poured a cup of wine into his mouth with an indignant face from the memory of him losing 3,000 purple coins. Young man, you've only lost 3,000 purple coins, so what? Compared to those who have gambled away millions of purple coins, your loss is nothing but a drop in the ocean. The scholar laughed. The 4 other mercenaries sitting at the table had one of the men give a long sigh. A heaven-tier battle skill. Even if I were to live out my entire life now, I would not be able to find one myself. For Jianchen to be able to obtain one so easily, I am envious of him. Big brother, we were just born in the wrong time. Otherwise, we would have been able to participate in the gathering of the mercenaries as well. You wish. Do you think first place is that easy to obtain? Did you not see those that were far stronger than us participate and be eliminated before they could enter the top 10? Even if we were participants, it would be a miracle for us to enter the top 100. That's right, we aren't all that strong, so it's best not to think about these things. The Tianyuan continent is quite large and has no shortage of geniuses. Each one has been specially trained since young, so their strength should be strong enough to become an Earth Saint Master at a young age. Furthermore, they have access to the most profound battle skills and cultivation methods. Did you not see that Ming Dong? He was already able to use an advanced heaven-tier battle skill at his young age, and yet he was still only 3rd place. I'm sure that first place Jianchen is strong enough to even fight against Heaven Saint Masters. From the chatter of everyone around, the majority of the people were envious and full of admiration for Jianchen. But then, a sharp-eyed fellow had noticed Jianchen walking in before crying out in surprise, "Everyone look! Isn't that the winner of the competition, Jianchen?" Upon hearing his voice, everyone immediately stopped eating and swung their heads to look at where the man had pointed. Each one looked on in shock at the white-robed Jianchen. Within the previously loud inn, no one dared to make a sound. Jianchen ignored all the gazes on him, since he had no interest in any one of them. With that, Jianchen left for the upper levels of the inn. The moment Jianchen disappeared, everyone in the inn immediately exploded with chatter. "Jianchen's in this inn? Do you think he's renting a room here? Jianchen looks even younger than I thought. With one look, I could tell he is from a large family with a strong potential. Not only is he young and promising, but he is quite handsome too." At such a young age, Jianchen was able to defeat the 6th Cycle Earth Saint Master Tsar. His potential is truly unlimited. The heaven-tier battle skill and cultivation method Jianchen won from the gathering of the mercenaries surely has to be on him right now. How envious. Pay attention to what you say so you don't get in trouble for it. Do you not have a filter on what words you speak out loud? A few of the inn residents continued to talk among each other. Even the busy waitresses hurriedly spoke to each other. "Hurry up and report to the shopkeeper. The king of mercenaries, Jianchen, is in our inn. This is a great event." Arriving at the 2nd floor of the inn, Jianchen immediately walked to where Qin Zhao's room was. They had already prepared a private room where all sorts of exotic delicacies were prepared for him to congratulate him on his win. Seated at the dinner table already was Dugu Feng, Tianmu Ling, Qin Ji, Yun Zheng, Senior, and Ming Dong, Qin Shao, Qin Ju, and several others. Aside from them, the grand elder of the Tianqin clan could be seen waiting with a smile. Among all the people Jianchen was familiar with, all of them except Huang Luan had gathered here. At the dinner table, everyone congratulated Jianchen on his win. Even the grand elder of the Tianqin clan had changed his attitude toward Jianchen to a more respectable status. Even Qin Ji and Tianmu Ling were given respect from him. That was also because the 3 outsiders of the Tianqin clan, Dugu Feng, Qin Ji, and Tianmu Ling, were all from 3 different factions with even more strength than what the Tianqin clan could afford to provoke. Qin Ji especially had a very extraordinary identity. After the meal, when everyone had left, Jianchen and Ming Dong both returned to Jianchen's room where Ming Dong spoke. "In 2 days, Uncle Tian and I will go bring my father and mother here, so I will be gone for some time." "That is no problem, be at ease. In 3 days I will be leaving to enter the Holy Land for half a year." Jianchen laughed as he waved his hand in a casual manner. Sitting by Jianchen's side, Ming Dong asked, "Jianchen, I've known you for quite some time, but I don't know where your family is. Did you wish for me to bring some news to them?" Jianchen's expression immediately grew conflicted. Some thoughts hidden away in his brain were brought out by this question. "I've left my home for a good amount of time by now, but I don't know whether or not my mother is faring well. There is also my elder brother Changyang Hu and second sister Changyang Mingyue who have both cared for me always. Changyang Mingyue surely must have married by now. What a shame that I wasn't able to attend the ceremony. Jian Chen thought dejectedly. At this thought, he had suddenly realized just how much he desired to return home and see his family once more. It had been far too long since he had left his home. Seeing the dejected Jian Chen, Ming Dong had an indescribable look in his eye. From Jian Chen's expression, he could see that something was weighing down on him. Placing a hand on Jian Chen's shoulder, Ming Dong spoke lightly, "Jian Chen, what's wrong? If there's any trouble, go ahead and tell me. I, Ming Dong, will definitely find a way to help you. If I can't, then I will definitely ask Uncle Tian to." Ming Dong's words had shaken Jian Chen awake from his thoughts. Shaking his head, Jian Chen replied, "No, there's nothing, I'm just remembering some old memories, that's all." Jian Chen needed power to deal with the Hua Yun sect. Although he knew that asking Ming Dong and Uncle Tian for help would easily resolve the matter, and probably touch upon the crisis Jesson Kingdom was currently facing as well, Jian Chen did not wish to go about this route. The Hua Yun sect had forced him to run away from his home when he was only 15 years old. To Jian Chen, this had carved an unforgettable amount of hatred for them into him. Jian Chen desired to finish this affair with his own power. He did not want any outside power to help him with his revenge. With a mental sigh, Jian Chen took the heaven's stolen fortune out from his space ring and said, "Ming Dong, your house isn't that far away from the Jesson Kingdom, so I hope that during your return trip, you could hand this over to Changyang Ba of the Changyang clan in Lore City." Originally, Jian Chen planned on giving the advanced Heaven Tier Battle Skill 9 Cloud Movement to Ming Dong to give to the Changyang clan, but after some thought, he decided to instead give them the Heaven's Stolen Fortune. This was because a Heaven Tier Battle skill was far too precious. He was afraid that if news were to spread that an advanced Heaven Tier Battle skill was at the Changyang clan, there would be trouble. While the Changyang clan was not weak, they weren't strong enough to protect two Heaven Tier Battle skills, especially since one of them was an advanced Heaven Tier Battle skill. So, Jian Chen finally decided to let Ming Dong bring the Heaven's Stolen Fortune back with him because of the special characteristic of the battle skill. When activated, no person would be able to tell that it was a Heaven Tier Battle skill. This was a battle skill that directly increased one's strength. It was hard to tell that it was anything special, as it could conceal itself very well, unlike other Heaven Tier Battle skills, which would display astounding power as soon as they were activated. Ming Dong took the Heaven's Stolen Fortune with a serious look as he spoke. "Don't worry, Jian Chen. I'll definitely bring this back to Changyang Ba of the Changyang clan. Remember, you must keep that this is a Heaven Tier Battle skill a secret." Ming Dong's departure was sudden. By the second day, he had left Mercenary City with a respectful farewell. At the same time, Qin Shao, Qin Ju and the other Tianqin clansmen followed the Grand Elder out of Mercenary City. Although they didn't wait for Tian Zhou, the Grand Elder had concluded that Tian Zhou must have met an unexpected situation, and with only a sad sigh, he said no more about the matter. He knew that gathering tokens within the isolated space was the goal, and even if he found out that Tian Zhou had been killed by someone, he would not be able to find them. Even Du Gufeng had said farewell to Jian Chen as he took the ruler armament along with some other elders out of Mercenary City, leaving only Jian Chen behind. Because Jian Chen would be residing within the Holy Land for half the year, he had already dispatched Senior In and Yun Zheng on a mission for the Flame Mercenaries. They were to go to the Jesson Kingdom and ensure that the Changyang clan would be given assistance. Although the distance from here to the Jesson Kingdom was quite large, this would not be a problem for the two. Chapter 343, The Matchless Heavenly Enchantress. By now, the inn that Jian Chen was residing in had a long red banner waving overhead. Written on it in fancy calligraphy was a single line of words not only congratulating Jian Chen for becoming the king of mercenaries, but it also notified everyone this inn was the inn he was staying at. Not only did it praise Jian Chen, but it also served to be an advertisement for the inn, improving its reputation. The owner of the inn had valiantly waived all of Jian Chen's expense and treated him as if he were the king of a nation. This type of respect was completely new to Jian Chen, and many times he thought that he had swapped lives with someone else. The gathering of the mercenaries was coming to a close, making the topic of Jianchen being the king of mercenaries an extremely popular one. Since the owner of the inn proudly stated who was staying at his inn, the entire mercenary city had learned that Jianchen was currently residing at the Take a Smell Inn. Many people began to draw close in hopes of observing Jianchen or with some other goal in mind. Therefore, many of them had reserved a room in the inn to stay close by. In short, the shrewd owner of the inn had transformed his inn into an almost legendary one within Mercenary City. With his identity and his place of residence revealed, Jianchen encountered many people arriving at his room, offering all sorts of invitations. In the end, Jianchen couldn't help it anymore and barred his room shut. At the same time, he notified the owner that he required a few days to cultivate and did not want to be bothered. He forbid anyone from disturbing him, else he would move in. The owner of the inn had been terrified by Jianchen's words. It was with great difficulty that he managed to have such a deity stay at his inn. How could he let Jianchen leave so easily? With that, he immediately agreed to Jianchen's request and had some of the hired hands blockade the entire area for Jianchen so that no one would be able to enter. Even a Heaven Saint Master was forbidden access. After all, this was Mercenary City, meaning not a single person would dare retaliate. Within the confines of his own room, Jianchen poured all his efforts into understanding the illusionary flash. Although he had already grasped the basics of it, he hadn't mastered the introductory steps. The illusionary flash was exceptionally profound and was even more complex to understand than the heaven's stolen fortune. After a few days, Jianchen had made very little progress, but with his speed he still managed to make a significant advancement. As Jianchen's comprehension of the illusionary flash grew deeper and deeper, he began to feel that if he were to truly master the battle skill, then he would be able to flash forward large distances at a terrifying speed. 3 days passed by quickly. A member of the Mercenary City ruling party came forward to find Jianchen before respectfully asking him to come out. Jianchen followed the youth to a plaza near a palace-like building where he met another resolute-looking middle-aged man waiting for him. "Honored Jianchen, I, Elder Feng, have been commanded to guide you. Please follow me." The middle-aged man spoke respectfully as he led Jianchen to a space gate. "Honored Jianchen, you must travel through this space gate to get to the other side. The elder is waiting for you." The man spoke. With a word of thanks, Jianchen stepped through the space gate. Jianchen already had a good understanding of Mercenary City, so when he heard that he needed to travel through a space gate, he no longer found it strange since he was used to it already. With a flash of light, Jianchen arrived on the other side of the space gate where a garden filled with sweet-smelling flowers could be seen. 50 meters ahead, 2 white-robed elders were sitting there playing chess. Jianchen recognized both of the elders. One of them was the elder who had provided all of the tokens at first and had been the referee for the finals. The other member was the elder who had been cleaning the armory. Taking a look around, Jianchen realized that he was standing in an ocean of flowers where countless of butterflies could be seen floating around. The place seemed as if it was a rare paradise on Earth. Aside from the 2 elders, there was no one else around. Jianchen had no idea what he should be doing, so he walked toward the elders slowly with light steps. Finally arriving close to the chess-playing elders, Jianchen waited patiently for them to finish without a word. The 2 elders had serene looks on their faces as they concentrated completely on the chess game while completely ignoring Jianchen's existence. After waiting for almost 2 hours, the 2 elders finally finished their game with helpless expressions. So it was a draw again? Elder Hui, it seems that even after deciding on a chess game, a decision was still not easily made. The elder who had been in the armory laughed as he began to place the chess pieces back in a box. The one called Elder Hui had a bitter smile on his face as well. "That's right, while we don't have much to decide between when it comes to winning or losing, it is still a tough choice." Quickly, the 2 elders cleaned up the area before standing up. The elder who had been in the armory, cleaning, looked up at the sky. "It's about time for us to go." Elder Hui nodded his head. "Then let us be on our way, youngster, follow us." He directed his final words toward Jianchen. "Yes, senior." Jianchen hurriedly cupped his hands in response. The two elders had to be peak heaven saint masters at the very least, especially the elder who had been a referee. Many times Jian Chen had fleeting thoughts that he was a saint ruler. To such a person, Jian Chen was but only a small dragonfly. Hearing Jian Chen call him senior, Elder Hui laughed. "Youngster, you are called Jian Chen, correct? You may call me the 13th elder. As for the other elder, you may call him the 8th elder. There is no need to call us seniors." "Yes, elders." Jian Chen cupped his hands hastily. At the same time, he had been shocked to hear that there was at least 18 elders within Mercenary City. Following the two elders through the flowery world, Jian Chen finally arrived at another large space gate several kilometers down the road. At that moment, Jian Chen found himself in a desolate area where a large sacrificial platform could be seen with thousands of memorial tablets. By the platform, there were already 8 people who were staring absent-mindedly at the tablets. From the 8 men, there was a single middle-aged man, a 40-year-old woman, an elder who looked to be a 70 or 80-year-old grandmother, and the rest were all quite elderly themselves. It was as if the 8 people had returned to their original state where their presence had been held back. Each one looked quite ordinary and did not have a single characteristic of being unique in any way. These 8 are the elders of Mercenary City, each one of them holding a decisive amount of power. The 8th elder spoke. Growing serious, Jian Chen took a look at each one of them to confirm their identities. "The way to the Holy Land will open in an hour, wait for now. Aside from us elders, there are still a few men from Mercenary City that haven't arrived yet." The 13th elder spoke as he and the 8th elder both walked toward the platform where the memorial tablets were. Without a word, Jian Chen followed behind with a strange look at the memorial tablets and a curious mind. At this moment, a sound could be heard from a long distance away as a cyan-robed woman with a zither could be seen flying rapidly toward Jian Chen and the rest. The woman was quite tall and her hair shined on her cotton robes. Her clear and bright eyes could be seen shining in a way as if they could steal souls. Her fingers gently and tenderly caressed the strings of her zither. With each step, her slim waist swayed to the side gently. Although her appearance was not yet clear to see, the light radiating from her could only indicate that she was a matchless beauty that could cause nations to fall at the blink of an eye. The woman gently walked toward the elders from Mercenary City. "This woman has come to greet everyone." The woman's voice was extremely charming and bewitching, almost as if it was the music from the 9th heaven instead of being from the secular world. Hearing the woman speak, Jian Chen instantly grew muddled in the head. He had never heard such a beautiful voice before. It was an unspeakable sensation that shouldn't exist in this world. Hearing the voice, the other elders slowly turned around before cupping their hands with a smile. "It has been 50 years, but the heavenly enchantress still remains as beautiful as ever." One of the elders said. The cyan-robed woman smiled. "15th elder is too kind. Heavenly enchantress, it has been 50 years. You look even more beautiful than before." The middle-aged woman spoke as she looked at her with a breathtaking eye. "Ha, the matchless saint of the zither, the heavenly enchantress. A beauty that would bring the moon to shame and can captivate even the birds and beasts. The fairy of the Tianyuan continent with beautiful grace. With one word, hundreds of flowers grow ashamed of themselves." One of the elders laughed. Hearing this, the other men had small smiles on their faces as they too began to praise her. Heavenly enchantress? Saint of the zither? Could it be that this woman is the very same heavenly enchantress spoken of by the second miss of the Tianqing clan? Jian Chen thought with shock as he looked at the stunning woman with a great wave of emotions running through his heart. Chapter 344. Entering the Holy Land. Judging from the news given to Jian Chen from the second miss of the Tianqing clan, the heavenly enchantress was a legendary figure on the Tianyuan continent. She was capable of causing a nation to fall with her beauty that was deemed extremely unique. Her ability with the zither was peerless and possessed the zither of the demonic cry that could bring any other expert of the zither to shame with her songs. Even her opponents would be entranced by the melodic songs and would have their souls erased before their bodies would follow suit. Aside from that, The heavenly enchantress had prevented a war between two countries with a single ballad over the battlefield, causing the 100,000 soldiers on both sides to fall asleep for 3 days and 3 nights. A truly fearful feat. The heavenly enchantress had become a saint a long time ago, as well as being a saint ruler. A person like this was already standing at the top of the continent and overlooked the others. What Jian Chen hadn't imagined was that he would be able to see the once-in-a-generation saint ruler, the heavenly enchantress. This was something that had moved Jian Chen's emotions. After all, a saint ruler was right in front of him, even more than that, but this woman was a living legend. The heavenly enchantress had her facial features hidden, but it did nothing to hide the outline and her body. Not only was she quite tall, but her beautiful body was indescribable. One could choke from her beauty, as it seemed as if she was not meant for this world. And even Jian Chen had found it hard to move his eyes away from her the moment he locked onto her, as if she was the only person in the world. The surrounding world seemed to have lost its color while she was the only focal point left. Then, the heavenly enchantress had discovered Jian Chen's gaze and turned to look at him with a surprised look on her face as she spoke with a heavenly voice. "Elders, this must be the king of mercenaries, correct?" The 8 elder laughed. "The heavenly enchantress guesses correctly. He is called Jian Chen and is our king of mercenaries. Although he is only a first cycle Earth Saint Master, his fighting strength is not weak at all." Nodding her head, the heavenly enchantress spoke no more, as if she lost her interest in him. Switching her gaze over to the memorial tablets, her eyes suddenly grew distracted. Seeing just how the elders were speaking to the heavenly enchantress as if they were her equal, Jian Chen was astonished. He couldn't help but think to the words the 13th elder had said. The Holy Land was a place that only saint rulers could enter, and if one who was not a saint ruler wanted to enter, then they would have to be the king of mercenaries. Then does this mean these elders here are all saint rulers at the very least? Even the 113th elder who had been in the armory is a saint ruler too then. Jian Chen thought to himself in shock. For there to be 10 saint rulers, Mercenary City was far too strong to believe then. Afterwards, the elders came up one after another to introduce themselves to Jian Chen. As Jian Chen grew to understand their identities, he realized that aside from the first 2 elders, the rest were all affiliated with other powers but had a friendly relation with Mercenary City. Right now, aside from Jian Chen, there was 26 people of both genders. The vast majority of the people there were past the age of 70, but there were still a few 40-years-old men. Yet, the person with the most attention was the heavenly enchantress, who stood within a group of people that made her seem as if she was the crane amongst the chickens. Right now, there was still 1 more hour remaining when another person had flown through the air and joined with everyone else. This person was a youth who wore an expensive-looking white robe. His age was about 20 years old. He was also extraordinarily handsome on a scale far different than Jian Chen. However, while he was handsome, his face had a slight feminine aspect to it, while Jian Chen had a masculine expression. The youth had a smiling expression that emitted light as he walked towards the heavenly enchantress and cupped his hands together. "Heavenly enchantress, it has been 50 years, yet you've grown even more beautiful than before." The youth spoke as if infatuated, with eyes that did nothing to show his adoration for her. The heavenly enchantress' eyes narrowed as a look of disgust could be seen. Not even looking at the youth, she spoke, "I thank Bijin Wang for his compliments." As if ignoring the attitude the heavenly enchantress was showing towards himself, the youth walked towards the heavenly enchantress with an infatuated expression towards her as he spoke once more. "Heavenly enchantress, we've known each other for 200 years by now. When will you invite me to your 3 sacred isles for a tour? I've heard that the 3 sacred isles is a paradise on earth without any strife and only a group of harmonious fishermen. This place has long since distanced itself with war as well. I've long since awaited for such a place. I, Bijin, have not fought for so long for such a reason." Each one of the elders looked on at this conversation with a helpless face. They all knew that Bijin had admired the heavenly enchantress. Back when Bijin had been a middle-aged man, when he had came across the heavenly enchantress, it had been love at first sight. Using a secret method, he had managed to rejuvenate his face back to his youth so that he could win her affection. Unfortunately for the love-starved wolf, the heavenly enchantress had ignored Bijian's enthusiastic attempts in trying to win her love. As time went on, however, she had eventually came to loathe him. "My apologies, Bijian Wang, my 3 sacred isles is accepting no one." Her voice was as cold as ice now. As if encouraged, Bijian Wang had an innocent look on his face. "Heavenly enchantress, could it be that even I am an outsider too?" "Naturally," spoke the heavenly enchantress without taking a second to think while simultaneously giving no face. Seeing the icy cold attitude of the heavenly enchantress, Bijian Wang had a helpless look on his face as he faced the skies and sighed. Afterwards, he walked by the heavenly enchantress' side without another sound. In his pursuit of her, even after so long without success, he did not give up. At that moment, the space on the platform suddenly began to tremble as a large amount of energy could felt gathering slowly within. "The time has come, the Holy Land is about to open." An elder of Mercenary City spoke. Everyone's gaze was sucked towards the space where the energy inside was growing richer and richer in density as well as intensity. At last, the space suddenly seemed as if it was starting to distort. A few moments later, the large amount of energy already gathered there had reached a limit, causing the space to rip apart to reveal a 3 feet wide door made of chaotic space that could not be seen through. "The gate to the Holy Land has opened, everyone please walk in." An elder of Mercenary City spoke with a respectful tone before walking slowly towards the gate and then disappearing into the chaos. Suddenly, the other elders of Mercenary City bowed towards the gate to the Holy Land before disappearing inside. When all of the elders from Mercenary City had entered through the gate, the saint rulers from outside the city bowed respectfully at the gate before walking through it as well. Jianchen was the last one to enter, although he had no idea why everyone had bowed at the gate before entering, but he too followed suit and gave a bow to the gate before stepping into the chaotic gate to the Holy Land. Just as Jianchen had reappeared, he had found himself standing on a bright ray of light. The atmosphere in this area was far different than before, as it felt as if it was rather moist. Taking a look around, Jianchen was startled to find out there was no sky to be seen in this area. The entire area 100 meters above was a single slab of stone that extended as far as he could see as if it was scooped from the stomach of a mountain. And right in the middle of the ceiling, a single crystal could be seen overhead with a dim light that seemed to fluctuate with energy. The 8th elder walked up to Jianchen's side, prompting Jianchen to ask in wonder, "8th elder, is this the Holy Land?" The 8th elder nodded his head. "That's correct, this is the Holy Land. I am sure that you can see that we are within the stomach of a mountain. The Holy Land is indeed here." The founder of Mercenary City, Mo Tianyun himself, had created a single space within the city as a way to reach the Holy Land. That would come to be known as the Gate to the Holy Land, and aside from that method, there is no alternative route to get here. Jianchen took a look at the Holy Land. He had no idea that Mo Tianyun would somehow be connected to the Holy Land. Just then, the 8th elder looked at the floating crystal suspended overhead and slowly raised his hand as if he was being attracted by a sudden force of attraction. Slowly, the crystal began to slowly float towards the elder's hand before finally making contact with it. Observing the item, Jianchen could see that it was a conical-shaped crystal around the size of a thumb and yet sparkled with a bright light from its transparent body. The energy that flowed from it was remarkably pure, as if the entire crystal itself was completely pure without a single taint. 8th elder, just what is this object? Jianchen couldn't help but ask curiously. Chapter 345. Cultivation in the Holy Land. This item is something that is produced within the Holy Land. Every 50 years, another one of these will be made. This is something we call Mercenary's Heart, and is given to every single king of mercenaries in secret every 50 years. The 8th elder explained. The Mercenary's Heart is made of the special energy condensed within the Holy Land. If it is absorbed, then not only will one's strength be increased rapidly, but it will also increase one's spirit. As long as one is not a saint ruler, then their strength will achieve a great amount of progress and improvement. Handing over the Mercenary's Heart to Jianchen's hand, the 8th elder spoke. "Take this and swallow it before you go off somewhere and refine it." You will see that you will make an extreme amount of progress. Yes, 8th Elder. Jianchen had no hesitation as he immediately placed the mercenary's heart into his mouth and swallowed. Bear in mind, the mercenary's heart must be refined within the Holy Land. If it is taken out of the Holy Land, then the energy gathered within the mercenary's heart will quickly evaporate. The 8th Elder warned Jianchen. This one understands. I thank the 8th Elder for his warning. Jianchen cupped his hands in thanks as his heart was still reeling with shock. This mercenary's heart was far too strange if it couldn't be taken outside and was completely useless for a saint ruler. But the strangeness wasn't all too bad. It was still given freely as a reward to every king of mercenaries, which was coincidentally the only non-saint ruler qualified to enter the Holy Land. The Holy Land has a total of 4 areas. In the first area, the time flow goes 10 times faster than the outside world. 10 months in there is 1 month in the outside world. If you wish to try to refine your saint force or try to comprehend any heaven tier battle skill, the first area is your best choice. The second area is best for understanding the 6 elements of the world. In that area, one could accomplish twice the work for half the effort, making improvements to one's strength quite rapid and effective. The third and fourth area is where the best part of the Holy Land are. The Holy Land's most precious items can be found there, such as saint tier battle skills and even techniques of a senior generation that is comparable to a saint tier battle skill. Those not of the saint ruler realm will find it hard to comprehend, and thus is useless to you. The fourth area is where we elders of Mercenary City have left behind all that we have learned and realized over our years. To you, they are useless because you have no hopes in even coming in contact with it, let alone being able to comprehend the absolute profoundness of them. Thus, the area that suits you best is the first area. You should cultivate there for half a year. It'll be the same as if cultivating for 5 years in the outside world. The 8th Elder explained to Jianchen. He had been the announcer for the gathering of the mercenaries, so explanations had been something he was in charge of. He had a responsibility to explain matters regarding the Holy Land clearly and did not treat Jianchen with any special consideration. After he had finished talking, the 8th Elder left Jianchen's line of sight, leaving him the only person around. Taking an observation of the place around himself, Jianchen had noticed that the other 20 elders had already disappeared from sight, so that he was the last person here. Not wanting to squander any of his precious time, he heeded the 8th Elder's words and began to travel for the first area so that he could begin refining the mercenary's heart. The very moment that Jianchen had entered the first area, Jianchen felt that the space within this place was completely abnormal, that made his body feel quite unsuited for, as if the area was objecting to Jianchen's presence. This must be the first area where time goes 10 times as fast. Jianchen thought to himself as his feet continued onwards and took him to the abyss where he could feel the energy density grow even heavier. As soon as Jianchen had reached the deepest parts of this place, he took a look around only to see a cyan-robed person sitting 50 meters away. It was the heavenly enchantress. Standing from afar, Jianchen couldn't help but look at her back, which concealed not a single part of her stunning body. With only a smallest amount of hesitation, Jianchen slowly walked towards the heavenly enchantress. As he drew 30 meters closer, Jianchen suddenly felt the energy in the area suddenly grow richer as it pulled towards the heavenly enchantress body. The speed in which it was being pulled increased, and without any explanations, Jianchen knew that the area the heavenly enchantress was in was the core of the first area. Jianchen stopped 10 meters away from her before sitting down. While he knew that the closer he got to where the heavenly enchantress was, the richer the energy would be, but at the same time, he did not dare to get too close to her. Senior, the Holy Land's Saint Tier battle skill and other cultivational insights left behind by our predecessors, why haven't you gone to find them? Jianchen asked the heavenly enchantress with confusion. With so many saint rulers here, a Saint Tier battle skill and the insights from those of generations past was an undeniable treasure. But the heavenly enchantress had decided to come to this first area to refine her saint force, unlike the others. But the heavenly enchantress continued to sit down with her eyes closed as if she hadn't heard Jianchen at all. After half a day of waiting without a response, Jianchen had figured that an expert of the Saint Ruler would be extremely arrogant and would not even stoop down to a level where they would waste words with an Earth Saint Master. Without bothering to ask any more questions, Jianchen immediately closed his eyes and began to refine the mercenary's heart. I follow the path of the zither and use sound to fight. My road is different from the others, their battle skills and insights are unsuitable for me and provide no help. Just as Jianchen had closed his eyes, the voice of the heavenly enchantress could be heard ringing in the air like the sounds of the song of heaven. Flashing open his eyes, Jianchen realized that the heavenly enchantress had still not yet moved from her spot, but a cyan-colored mist had blocked his line of sight. Without even waiting for a response from Jianchen, the heavenly enchantress continued to speak. So you are the king of mercenaries. I am sure you have already obtained the mercenary's heart. It is a rare treasure that will surely bring about a great deal of change to your strength with fragments of the profound mysteries of the world inside it. The heavenly enchantress spoke with her eyes closed. I thank Senior for her words. Jianchen cupped his hands together. There is no need to call me Senior, just call me Heavenly Enchantress. She spoke without the initial coldness from before. Afterwards, the heavenly enchantress spoke no more even after Jianchen had asked several questions. With a dejected look, Jianchen began to refine the mercenary's heart once more. The mercenary's heart was extremely magical. Absorbing and refining the energy within it was fast enough for his speed and spirit to make leaps and bounds, almost as if the mercenary's heart was hiding some sort of strange energy that Jianchen could use to blend into his own body and strengthen him. Furthermore, there were even some of the fragments that the heavenly enchantress had spoken about. With 1 month inside the Holy Land being equal to 10 months in the outside world, Jianchen had already spent 2 months inside before the mercenary's heart was finally refined. His strength by that point had made an extreme change, bringing him up to the 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master realm and was already on the verge of making the breakthrough to the 4th cycle. After this increment of strength, Jianchen's spirit had also made a significant change. Compared to before, his spirit was 3 times as big as before, a drastic change that had made Jianchen unbelievably happy. And once the mercenary's heart had been absorbed, Jianchen's mind had many different slivers of mysterious rays of light that were hard to grab hold of. These rays of light were seemingly the profound mysteries of the world, yet at the same time, they were also something different, causing Jianchen to feel confused. Although Jianchen could understand that these were the fragments that the heavenly enchantress had talked about, he still couldn't fully understand it. It could be said that he had a mysterious treasure but was unable to find the key to unlock it and comprehend the secrets within. 2 months later, Jianchen had opened his eyes once more only to see the heavenly enchantress still in the same place with her eyes closed as well. Standing up, Jianchen had completely refined the mercenary heart and had now wanted to take a look at the other 3 areas. Leaving without a sound, Jianchen had arrived at the 2nd area, which had 6 different caves. Each cave was different and had 6 different types of elements: light, dark, fire, earth, water, and wind. Deciding upon the light attribute cave, Jianchen saw that the inside of the cave was extraordinarily bright, giving a sensation of dryness. It was almost as if the sunlight had been intensified within this cave, but unlike the normal rays of light, the light here was giving him a painful sensation, almost as if the light was trying to kill him. Within the light-filled cave, Jianchen could feel an abundance of radiant saint force. Radiant saint masters were majestic within the Tianyuan continent since they could use the radiant saint force to heal the injuries of others. Some of the stronger radiant saint masters could even bring a person back to life and violate the natural order of the heavens. This type of radiant saint master would be by no means a weak individual. On the other hand were the radiant warriors who were given the nicknames of being undying. Radiant warriors were filled with radiant saint force and were exceedingly rare. Although they could control the radiant saint force, they followed the way of the hegemon, which contrasted against the radiant saint master's way of the king. They could only heal themselves and could not heal anyone else. Radiant warriors were also able to use their radiant saint force to harm others as an attack. If used on their own bodies, it would heal them, but if used on someone else, it would cause damage instead. Thus, in terms of healing, they were not equal to a radiant Saint Master. As for the light attribute cave, Jianchen could feel both the soft rays of radiant Saint Force as well as the hard tyrannical ray of radiant Saint Force. So with the harsh rays of light stabbing into his body, Jianchen would naturally feel a sharp stabbing sensation. Not only could light help men, but it could also kill them. Chapter 346. Saint Tier Battle Skill. Jianchen was a radiant Saint Master and not a radiant warrior in that regard. A radiant Saint Master succeeded in using their spirit to augment and strengthen their control over the radiant Saint Force in the world to heal those that needed it. A radiant warrior cultivated like any other cultivator in order to fight and improve their own strength. Spirit was secondary to them since it was absolutely unrelated to improving their strength. Thus, the light attribute cave would not be extremely effective for him since he wasn't a light attributed cultivator. A radiant Saint Master and radiant warrior had only a slight difference in name, but they walked two different paths of cultivation. One focused on the spirit and the other focused on Saint Force. He quickly left the light attributed cave. Jianchen knew that the light attributed element inside was meant for people to comprehend, but it would not serve him any use. Not only that, but he couldn't handle the painful stinging sensation. Afterward, Jianchen visited the other caves. Aside from some small increase in his understanding, since his inner Saint Force had no attribute, he felt no connection to any of the caves. Quickly, Jianchen arrived at the third area, which was a single huge mountain wall. There were 8 abnormally large caverns positioned on the cave walls. While most of the caves were located very high up on the wall, the lowest cave was only 30 meters high. The highest one was over 100 meters up, reaching almost to the top of the cave. The entire wall was as smooth as a shiny mirror with no footholds, meaning that those without strength would find it impossible to climb. Above the entrances to these caverns were a few words. The very first cavern had the words, Second Heavenly Layer Saint King Yunyang Wudi's Remnants. The top 3 caves had the words, Ninth Heavenly Layer Saint King Tian Qinyu's Remnants. Ninth Heavenly Layer Saint King Shui Wuya's Remnants. Ninth Heavenly Layer Saint King Longxi Xieshuan. Jianchen's eyes swept across the caves with awestruck fascination. These 8 caves all held the remnants of Saint Kings. The topmost 3 caves had even housed Saint Kings at the 9th Heavenly Layer. Could it be that all of these Saint Kings were from Mercenary City? Jianchen muttered. It was only now that he realized the power he had seen in Mercenary City was the tip of the iceberg. Mercenary City towered over the Tianyuan continent for countless of years as the pinnacle city. Not only did they have several Saint Ruler experts, but they also had some Saint King overseers. This type of colossal power was akin to a ferocious war beast that no one had the possibility of killing. Suddenly, Jianchen couldn't help but think back to when he was in that isolated space collecting tokens for the competition. When he had been in the shrine, Ming Dong's uncle Tian had been a Saint Ruler 5,000 years ago. Could it be possible for him to have made a breakthrough to become a Saint King after so long? Or maybe even a Saint Emperor? Since he had been residing within the isolated space along with the place used for the competition, could he too be a member of Mercenary City? Sucking in a deep breath, he slowly started to try and calm himself down. With a single leap, he landed within the lowest cavern. The passageway within the cavern was quite long and curvaceous. After walking about 300 meters, Jianchen finally arrived at a dead end, which was a single spacious cave around 50 meters in width. There wasn't any sources of light, but what should have been a dark cave somehow was bright, similar to the light outside. But the source of this light could not be found, giving this cave another sense of mystery. All around the cave were various paintings of men. Each painting was almost lifelike, and in each painting, the person drawn within seemed to be performing some sort of graceful movement. Within the center of the cave, 3 men were sitting idly while staring at the paintings with a stiffness similar to that of a statue. Not a single hair could be seen moving, and within the 3 of them, Jianchen recognized the 13th elder. Could it be this painting portrays one of the legendary Saint Tier battle skills? Jianchen thought. Walking toward the 3 men, he followed suit and began to stare fixedly at the painting. but after half a day he had failed to understand anything from the painting. Jianchen, how did you come to be here? Did the 8th elder not tell you to stay at the first area to cultivate? Suddenly, Jianchen could hear the wizened voice of the 13th elder, who spoke with shock. 13th elder, I was only taking a look around. I heard from the 8th elder that the 3rd area had a Saint tier battle skill. Could this painting be it? Jianchen asked. Since he was afraid of disturbing the other 2 men, Jianchen spoke in a quiet voice. Correct, this is indeed a Saint tier battle skill. Since you are here, I presume that you have seen the other caverns. This is one of the riches of Mercenary City. In total, there are 8 Saint tier battle skills, the equivalent to the 8 senior elders of Mercenary City. Each one of them reached the Saint King realm, and these Saint tier battle skills were created by them. The 13th elder spoke. 13th elder, with these paintings all depicting a Saint tier battle skill, I don't see anything for cultivation methods. Just why is that? Jianchen asked with confusion. A Saint tier battle skill is different from a Heaven tier battle skill. There are no cultivation methods. Each advancement from this point on is dependent on oneself. The use of a Saint tier battle skill is to draw upon the energy of the world. So, to comprehend and understand a Saint tier battle skill, one must be a Saint ruler at the very least. That is because once one makes the breakthrough to become a Saint ruler, they will begin to understand the profound mysteries of the world and grasp the energy of the world. Jianchen, a Saint tier battle skill isn't something that you can understand right now. You are merely wasting your time here. Hurry on back to the first area and cultivate. You are the king of mercenaries for this time's gathering of the mercenaries. Wait until you become a Saint ruler and come back for the next gathering of the mercenaries to enter the Holy Land once again. The 13th elder spoke. I thank the 13th elder for his kind intentions. I had only wished to see this Saint tier battle skill, and even though I was unable to understand it, I was still able to further my insights. Jianchen smiled. It is up to you. You only have half a year's time. I hope you treasure it wisely. The elder said before turning away. Jianchen kept calm and looked back toward the first painting. Now that he knew that these paintings were Saint tier battle skills, his attitude toward them changed completely. He no longer looked at them with a simple gaze and instead began to look at them intently so that not even the expressions were neglected. As he looked at each and every movement within the diagrams, Jianchen would occasionally feel a small revelation appear within his mind. It was as if he were on the verge of understanding something but was unable to grasp the final step and grew confused once more. Seeing just how each one of these movements and forms had some sort of secret, Jianchen was unable to completely understand just what was the purpose, leaving him quite vexed. With each observation, Jianchen could feel his thoughts grow more and more chaotic as he felt his mind expand. It was almost as if his head had become a constantly expanding balloon, and since he couldn't bear the air expanding within, his head was hurting badly. Jianchen knew that this Saint tier battle skill was the cause, therefore he immediately turned away and sat on the ground. He tried to think of nothing, emptying his mind of everything as he fell into a deep meditation. After an unknown amount of time, Jianchen had finally regained control of his mind, allowing him to open his eyes and stare at the painting once more. Now Jianchen had a better understanding of the first painting. Slowly, he could understand that the people within the painting were like the heavens. They were representatives of the world. Their movements were fused together with the world. Each move contained a profound mystery of the world, and each strike contained a profound theory, but that was something Jianchen didn't understand. However, when Jianchen had understood the first part, he could suddenly feel that this one strike displayed on the picture was quite simple and he could work it out. In one moment, he could feel that this move embodied many things, a simple strike that could have countless of variations. In another moment, he could feel that this move was akin to nature and harmonized the body with the world before shaping it. In the next moment, he could feel that it contained a terrifying amount of power that could scare demons and shatter the world. With such a simple-looking painting, Jianchen was able to understand so many pieces of information. If the other saint rulers were to figure out that Jianchen was able to grasp this much, their eyes would pop open in shock, and they would look at him with inconceivable looks. For an Earth Saint Master to gain so many insights after looking at a Saint tier battle skill was an impossible task. If Jian Chen were to later have a grasp on the profound mysteries of the world, then understanding this Saint tier battle skill was not too far out of his reach. In fact, establishing his own Saint tier battle skill wouldn't be impossible either. As soon as this bit of information had traveled to Jian Chen's mind, his mind instantly grew chaotic once more as it swelled up, threatening to fracture at any moment. Jian Chen immediately closed his eyes once more and forced himself to calm down. After calming down, Jian Chen methodically inspected the paintings over and over again. However, the only information he could gather from them was the fact that these simple paintings seemed to be filled with many mysteries. No matter how much he looked at them, he was unable to progress. Thus, he could only stop here. If he tried to push on, he would get a splitting headache, his thoughts would go berserk, and his thought processes would slow down. It seems that being unable to grasp the mysteries of the world causes one to be unable to understand the Saint tier battle skill. I can sense that this move is filled with many things, but I cannot understand the concepts. Could it be that the profound mysteries of the world are not enough? Jian Chen thought to himself. With one of the legendary Saint tier battle skills right in front of him but he himself unable to comprehend the meaning behind it, left Jian Chen feeling unwell. Chapter 347. Leaving the Holy Land, Jian Chen left the first cavern and visited the other 7 caverns. Each one contained its own Saint tier battle skill. Without any exceptions, each battle skill was illustrated on paintings that required the cultivator to comprehend it by themselves with no instructions. A Saint tier battle skill was not like a Heaven tier battle skill. Heaven tier battle skills were written using words, and required only a strong amount of practice in order to grasp the fundamentals. They also required time to initialize. A Saint tier battle skill was completely different. This required one's own ability to understand. So if one was unable to comprehend the Saint tier battle skill in their hand, it would be useless. A Saint tier battle skill was complicated and mysterious. A single Saint tier battle skill could have hundreds of paintings, and each form depicted on them could hold many different mysteries. Some only had 3 paintings, but each one held mysteries that could shatter the heavens and annihilate the earth. When looking at the pictures, the people drawn within the paintings seemed almost as if they were alive. Each one carried a world-shaking power. If one didn't have a certain base level of strength, they would not be able to endure this incorporeal presence. Even Jian Chen had felt an indescribable amount of power coming from the paintings, causing him to spit out blood. Even just the grace of the paintings was enough to inflict damage on Jian Chen. After such an event, Jian Chen had a stronger understanding of Saint tier battle skills. He knew what realm he was currently in, and that this Saint tier battle skill was beyond his level. If he were to never become a Saint ruler nor grasp the profound mysteries of the world, then the time he had spent trying to understand the Saint tier battle skills would all be for naught. Leaving the 3rd area, Jian Chen arrived at the 4th. The 4th area was simply a large study room with a table and chairs. Bookshelves could be seen everywhere with books filling up each shelf, bound with the animal leather of magical beasts. There was a strange energy that filled the area, attempting to prevent the books from corroding with time. These books were filled with insights from the previous generations of cultivators. While Jian Chen wouldn't be able to benefit much from them now, he could still memorize them. Then, he would be able to think back to them when his own comprehension was better. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had spent 3 months within the 4th area. Jian Chen had spent the entire time reading the insights from every single area possible within the realm of cultivation. While it was of no use to him now, they would come in handy later. During the days within the 4th area, Jian Chen had also tried to establish his foundation even more. The experiences within the books he had read were many, and the amount of insights he could still glean from them were plenty. Those under the Heaven Saint Master realm would absorb the vital energy of the world to increase both their Saint weapon and personal strength, but there was a barrier from the Great Saint Master to Earth Saint Master realm. If one succeeded in crossing the barrier, then they would become like the dragon, but if they failed, they would degenerate to a cripple who couldn't cultivate. Cultivating as an Earth Saint Master was an extremely simple task with no complications. As long as one reached the 6th cycle Earth Saint Master level, one could make the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master by the usage of the world's vital energy. With a small step, they would become a Heaven Saint Master. Heaven Saint Masters were able to fly through the air with the use of their inner saint force to levitate. With the world's energy, they could fly through the air without much of a drain to themselves. So, if one wanted to be a Heaven Saint Master, it was necessary to have a grasp on the vital energy of the world. The last part he grasped was the threshold to become a Saint Ruler. Although making the breakthrough to become a Saint Ruler wasn't as perilous as becoming an Earth Saint Master, the chances of making the breakthrough were many times harder. That was because if one wanted to make the breakthrough to become a Saint Ruler, they must have a fundamental grasp of the profound mysteries in the world. There were many secrets hidden within these profound mysteries, and they were the reason why there were so few Saint Rulers among the Tianyuan continent. This layer of cultivation was far away from the level Jianchen was currently at. Leaving the 4th area, Jianchen still had another month left in the Holy Land. During this final month, he had planned on going back to the 1st area to continue his cultivation for what would be equivalent to 10 months of actual time. Arriving at the 1st area, the Heavenly Enchantress was still sitting in her original spot without any signs of moving. Sitting 10 meters away from her so as to not disturb her, Jianchen sat down with 2 Class 5 monster cores. Although the energy within this area was quite rich, the energy within a Class 5 monster core was denser. Now that he was a peak 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master, he was only a small hop away from the 4th cycle. The energy within the Holy Land is different from the outside world. The energy in here contains fragments of the profound mysteries of the world. Although they are minuscule, they should still provide a large amount of help to you. Just as Jianchen had taken out his Class 5 monster cores, the Heavenly Enchantress' heavenly voice could be heard once more. Pausing in shock, Jianchen didn't think that the Holy Land's energy would contain the mysteries of the world. Cupping his hands to signify his thanks to the Heavenly Enchantress, he put the Class 5 monster cores back into his space belt and began to cultivate once more with the energy from the Holy Land. Suddenly, the 1st area's energy began to rush toward Jianchen in a frantic craze while Jianchen continued to accept all of it into his body like water into a whale. At the current pace, his absorption rate was no slower than the Heavenly Enchantress. With the help of the sword spirits, Jianchen was able to absorb both the world chi and the energy within the monster core at a rate several times faster than anyone else. Ever since he'd first awakened the sword spirits in Huang Village, they had stopped stealing energy from Jianchen without his permission. Therefore, the energy was now entirely absorbed by Jianchen alone. The Heavenly Enchantress' eyes flew open as she realized just how fast Jianchen was absorbing the energy. After staring in shock for a few moments, she closed her eyes once more. Half a moment later, Jianchen's face broke out into a smile in the middle of his cultivation. As expected, he discovered that the energy from the Holy Land was indeed different from that from outside. There were many things he didn't understand mixed into it, like whatever was contained in the strange energy from Mercenary City. These were all impossible for him to comprehend. They seemed like rings of light that flashed in his head fleetingly, unable to be grasped. Such things were no longer strange to Jianchen. These were precisely the profound mysteries of the world, the level that he could not yet touch. This realization made Jianchen happy. Spending the rest of his time in a deep cultivational meditation, he began to absorb some of the fragments of the profound mysteries of the world. Originally, he had planned to try and study the illusionary flash, but with this newfound discovery, he completely ignored that previous notion. Quickly, Jianchen had spent the last 10 months of his time in the 1st area of the Holy Land. His strength had already reached the 4th cycle Earth Saint Master, and in those 10 months, Jianchen's comprehension of the profound mysteries of the world had substantially increased. His mind was like a world of spirits, and the profound mysteries were like a divine light that would occasionally shine. Sometimes, a strange thought would occur in his mind, but Jianchen had never been able to fully grasp just what the thought meant. At times, his thoughts would be vague as he tried to comprehend them, but they were mysteries for a reason. With the help of the fragments he had already, Jianchen was able to establish a strong foundation of the profound mysteries. In his current state, even if he were to absorb any more of the fragments, he wouldn't be able to understand the current fragments. Today was the day that half a year had passed. The eighth elder appeared by Jianchen's side and spoke. "Jianchen, it has been half a year. Follow me and I'll guide you out." Sighing with some regret, Jianchen had finally recognized the benefits of the Holy Land. The first area was capable of allowing him more time to understand the profound mysteries. Now that he had a good understanding of the benefits of this place, he was reluctant to leave. "If only I could just stay here." Jianchen sighed at that thought. He knew that his wish was impossible, thus he could only follow the eighth elder and depart from the first area. Seeing Jianchen's reluctant face, the eighth elder couldn't help but laugh. "Jianchen, are you unhappy to leave the Holy Lands? This place is truly a treasured area if even saint rulers are attracted to this place so badly. You needn't worry, with you being this time's king of mercenaries, you'll have an opportunity to enter the Holy Lands once more at the next gathering of the mercenaries after you become a saint ruler. Each time the Holy Land opens every 50 years, you may remain inside for 5 years. One can stay in here for 5 years? Then why was it that I am only able to stay for half a year?" Jianchen asked with confusion. The eighth elder laughed. "Only a saint ruler is qualified to stay for 5 years. Even the number 1 ranking person in the gathering of the mercenaries is only qualified to stay for half a year. That is the rules of our mercenary city." Jianchen could find no faults in those words. The Holy Land was their territory after all. Anyone that wanted to enter the Holy Land had no right to dictate the rules as they personally saw fit. Afterward, the eighth elder took Jianchen to a space gate and left the Holy Land with him. Chapter 348. Being watched crossing through the space gate, Jianchen found himself in the flower garden once more. Flowers bloomed everywhere within a 50-meter radius, and the pavilion in the center towered over him as if it were bathing within the field of flowers. Jianchen wasn't unfamiliar with this place, he had seen it once before. This was where he saw the 8th and 13th elder play chess. A flying figure quickly made its way toward Jianchen before falling to the ground. It was a frail-looking middle-aged man that seemed quite scholarly, one who enjoyed reading more than anything else. This man wore white robes with grandiose stitching and his eyes shone brightly with liveliness. Seeing how this man had just been soaring through the sky, Jianchen could tell that he was a heaven saint master. Without any neglect and respect, the man cupped his hands together and spoke politely, "You must be Jianchen." Quickly swallowing the surprise back down his throat, Jianchen nodded his head. "Correct, I am he. The elder ordered me to come and collect you, please follow me." The middle-aged man replied. With a wave of his hand, Jianchen suddenly felt a formidable amount of energy envelop his entire body before he began to levitate through the air along with the middle-aged man. Could this heaven saint master be able to control the energy of the world? Jianchen couldn't help but think about this. Although he was calm on the outside, he was furiously trying to figure out how the energy that was enveloping him worked. The man was only traveling 10 meters above the ground, but the speed in which they were traveling was still very fast. Not long later, Jianchen and the man reached yet another space gate. Descending down to the ground, the middle-aged man spoke, "You can leave from here." Jianchen returned the way he came, through the space gate. He found himself in the plaza where the gathering of the mercenaries had taken place. Suddenly, a person came walking out from one of the halls. It was the crane-haired elder. Handing him a badge, the elder said, "This is the emblem of the king of mercenaries. It is made of a special material and has been interwoven with arrays so that when Saint Force is used to activate it, the vital energy of the world in a 10-kilometer distance will be absorbed into it for later cultivational usage." Jianchen's heart leaped into his throat as he immediately thought about the Flame Mercenaries and Changyang clan. This would definitely be a great boon for the two. Taking the emblem carefully into his own hands, Jianchen left the halls under the supervision of the commanding officer and walked out onto the streets. Jianchen tilted his head up to look at the sun overhead with a happy expression. After spending a long time within the Holy Land with no sun, Jianchen felt comforted by the sun rays basking his body in its light. By now, half a year had already passed since the gathering of the mercenaries had ended, and the entire mercenary city had already gone back to its normal everyday life with the exception of the season being hotter than before. However, the steady stream of people going in and out of the city was still there. Mercenary City was the holy city for mercenaries and merchants alike. Each of the 4 seasons was always a busy season, and many people traveled to the city. By now, winter had already passed and summer was fast approaching. With the scorching sun bearing down on the ground, it was already like the top of a burning slab of iron. Since Jianchen had spent a long time within the dark and damp holy grounds, he quickly found himself dry and thirsty. Walking to the middle plaza of Mercenary City, the plaza was now a 4-way intersection for everyone to cross. It was not as lively as it was half a year ago, but it still had many magical beast riders walking on the streets. As for the founder of Mercenary City, Emotianyun, his statue stood tall and stared up toward the sky with a real lifelike figure. By now, Jianchen had already stored away some fragments of the profound mysteries of the world within his head. The statue of Emotianyun was completely different before compared to his eyes now. To him, the statue seemed to be completely filled with an endlessly profound mystery. Even the seemingly normal hands of the statue were filled with a strange substance that made the statue seem more lifelike. At the same time, it seemed as if the statue was harmonized with the world completely. After a moment of careful observation, Jianchen finally regained his bearings and respectfully bowed toward the statue before leaving the area. His understanding of Mercenary City was growing more and more, causing Jianchen's respect of Emotianyun to deepen as well. Aimlessly roaming around the streets, Jianchen finally entered an inn so that he could sit down and eat a meal. After residing within the Holy Land for so long, he hadn't a single thing to eat in ages. It was already afternoon and past the regular eating time, so the inn was relatively clean with Jianchen as the only customer. At that moment, 3 other men came walking in before sitting down at a table. "Waitress, some wine and meat over here." Staring at the 3 men, Jianchen looked back to his own table and decided on what to eat. "Hazy, just wait until we finish our mission, then our mercenary group will become AB-ranked group." Another man spoke to the black-skinned man who had talked first. The dark-skinned man nodded his head. "Right, we were only AC-ranked group 3 years ago. But 3 years later, we've accomplished many missions and our own merits aren't bad either. Just wait for this mission to be finished, and we will truly become AB-ranked group." The 3 men were seasoned mercenaries. While they ate, they would occasionally talk about other mercenary-related affairs while simultaneously looking at Jianchen every so often. After some time, Jianchen had ate and drank his fill. With a satisfied clap, he spoke. "Waitress, is there a room free to stay for the night? I would like to reserve one." Jianchen spoke as he placed a purple coin on the table. "Yes, sir, we'll prepare a room for you right away. Please wait one moment." The waitress retrieved the purple coin with a smile and immediately left to make preparations. With a look toward the 3 other men, Jianchen had a meaningful smile on his face as he walked over. "Fellow friends, what might your names be?" Jianchen's sudden movement toward them had caught the 3 off guard, but they quickly recovered and had one man cup his hands with a smile. "This one is called Jianhua. And these 2 are my close friends, He Zi and Bao Yu." I could tell that fellow brother's chi was quite unordinary. "What might be your name?" "I am called Jianchen." Jianchen smiled. Hearing that, the 3 men instantly grew shocked. With an incredulous look, the one called Jianhua turned to look at Jianchen with doubt. "Could you mean that you are the Jianchen that won the gathering of the mercenaries half a year ago?" "I am he." Jianchen's smile had a strange look to it. "Ah, so you are Jianchen, how disrespectful of me." "Truly disrespectful." Brother Jianchen's name is a name that is as well known as a thunderclap to the ears. Who would have known that the 3 of us would be as fortunate to be able to come across Brother Jianchen today? Jianhua boomed outward with a respectful manner as the other 2 hurriedly cupped their hands in a respectful salute. Seeing their attitudes, Jianchen revealed a cold smile on his face. "Fellow friends, spare me your theatrics. Speak of your plans right now. Hearing this, the three men looked at Jianchen with shock and vacant stares. Shaking his crew-cut hair-styled head, Jianhua spoke with confusion. Brother Jianchen, what are you talking about? Jianchen snorted. You three have been following me for a good while. Do you think that I wouldn't know? Speak of your purpose. I hate wasting time. Still staring blankly at Jianchen, Jianhua could only smile as he continued to speak. Brother Jianchen is quite the jokester. How would we have followed you? This meeting was a coincidence. If my instinct isn't wrong, then you three are either from the Jetta clan or Shi family. Jianchen's eyes grew cold as his sharp eyes pierced into them with his gaze. The three men continued to stare blankly while Jianhua forced a helpless smile on his face. Brother Jianchen, I'm afraid I still don't understand. Might have you mistaken us for someone else? Seeing how their faces didn't seem to be hiding anything, Jianchen knew that asking any more questions would be pointless. Without wasting any more time, he left for the second floor of the inn. Right as Jianchen had disappeared, the shocked expressions of the three men instantly grew dark as they leaned close to each other. I didn't think he would be that vigilant. He already spotted us from far away. Jianhua whispered. What should we do now? Hazy asked. What else could we do? Let's report back to the elder. Afterward, the three men placed a purple coin down and left the inn at a fast pace. Within a grand-looking inn, the furious expression of an elder stared at the three men in front of him as he pointed and shouted curses at them. Useless. Absolutely useless. All I see is a pile of garbage right in front of me. You've let the person you were trailing see you. Just what use are you for other than eating? These three men were Jianhua, Hazy, and Baoyu. Each one of them had a pale face as they shivered in fear and didn't dare to utter a single sound. Elder, this isn't our fault. Our target was already extremely careful and far too powerful. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been noticed. Jianhua spoke with a quavering voice of fear in hopes of placating the elder's anger. At that moment, the doors to the room opened as another elder came walking in. Upon seeing the three men in front of him, the new-coming elder narrowed his eyes and spoke. Fourth elder, what happened? These three pieces of garbage were easily detected by Jianchen after his return from the Holy Lands. With their presences being detected, all of our plans have now gone up in smoke. The fourth elder exploded with anger as he swore once more. Chapter 349. A conversation. Hearing the words of the fourth elder, the newly arrived elder grew serious as he whispered, It can't be, although we haven't come across him before, he was still able to spot us? That is an exceptionally smart mind with a cautious character. Now that he knows we are watching him, unless he is sure he can escape our grasp, he will definitely refuse to leave Mercenary City. But that's just it. Our plans were to wait for Jianchen to leave Mercenary City before we come and reclaim our items. But at the most critical moment, these three pieces of trash ruined it all. Now Jianchen knows that we are watching him, he won't dare leave the city now. The fourth elder spoke. AI, if I had known Jianchen's skills at detection were so high, I would have tracked him myself. Now that the situation is like this, it's quite troublesome. If Jianchen continues to stay within Mercenary City, then we won't be able to make a move at all. The elder spoke with a sigh. Third elder, you are the intelligent one. What should we do in this case? The fourth elder calmed himself down. The third elder's eyebrows creased together in thought as he muttered, This Jianchen was able to become the king of mercenaries with relative ease. A person like this is by no means ordinary. Since he knows that we are currently watching him, there is no need for us to be secretive about it anymore. Third elder, let us go talk with him and see if there is any way for him to hand over the seal of Treasure Mountain to us. As for the death of the third young lord, we can wait another day. At the very least, we can recover the ruler armament. The fourth elder nodded his head. I thought as much. AI, the family head was far too greedy. If only he hadn't wanted the third lord to try and take the Solunar Bow from the Huang family during the competition. In the end, we didn't obtain the bow and the seal of Treasure Mountain was lost to us. This is truly a disgrace. Forget it, fourth elder. There's no use trying to think any more about this matter. Right now we should meet with Jianchen and hope that we can reclaim the ruler armament. The third elder spoke as he handed a red pill toward the fourth elder. The fourth elder had a lot of trust in the third elder, and so without any more questions he took the pill and swallowed it. Afterward, the two elders headed toward the inn. Jianhua had explicitly said, "How's Jianchen?" At this moment, Jianchen was on his bed and was studying the illusionary flash once more. The moment he sensed the elders, he opened his eyes and stared at them. The third elder stared at Jianchen for a moment before paying a compliment. "No wonder you are the king of mercenaries with such a talent like this. Jianchen, we are from the Shi family. If our third lord Shi Xiangran has ever offended you in the past, we would sincerely like to apologize to you and hope that you do not take this personally." Since the other party had not been rude to him, Jianchen returned the smile. "Senior is too polite. For such a small matter, I, the Jianchen, have already forgotten about it. As long as no one else looks for trouble with me, then I will not recklessly declare anyone as my enemy." The fourth elder nearly rolled his eyes at Jianchen's words as he cursed him internally. Jianchen had killed their third lord and had also stolen the Shi family's seal of Treasure Mountain heirloom. Therefore, it was only natural that the Shi family would chase after Jianchen. The third elder laughed. "Ha, brother Jianchen is really courageous. I wonder if you are willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain to our Shi family? We should exchange our weapons of war for gifts of silk. After all, the seal of Treasure Mountain cannot be activated without a combination of our Shi family's blood and a special, secret technique. It's useless in your possession, and it would make our Shi family feel extreme resent toward you. This will greatly impact your relationship with us. Can you please consider our offer? Naturally, if you are willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain, then we will naturally give you fair compensation for it." The third elder's words were sweet to hear, and he held no ill intent behind them. Even his tone had been calm and cordial without any sense of anger. Unfortunately, Jianchen knew better than to believe his words and sighed in disappointment. "I'm afraid to disappoint seniors, but the seal of Treasure Mountain has already been handed to someone else and is no longer within my possession." Jianchen's words caused the two elders to reveal horrified expressions as the third elder tried to keep the calm look on his face. "What? The seal of Treasure Mountain is no longer on you? Is that true? When I entered the Holy Land, I gave the seal of Treasure Mountain to Qinji, so it is no longer on me." Jianchen spoke. "You hoodlum! To give away such a precious treasure as if passing a gift, you ruffian! Are you not afraid of death? The treasure of the Shi family, just how could you give it away?" The fourth elder exploded with a furious rage as he pointed at Jianchen with a quivering finger. If it were not for Mercenary City, he would have long since tried to strangle Jianchen. The third elder's expression grew dim as his eyes gained an unholy light to them. Then, while he was thinking, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and began to write on the air with his blood, forming a complicated-looking array after some time. With an explosive shout, the third elder pressed against the core of the formation, "Seal of Treasure Mountain, return." As soon as he spoke, Jianchen's expression grew startled as he felt the seal of Treasure Mountain within his space ring suddenly begin to tremble and shake as if trying to separate itself from the space ring. Jianchen's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't thought that there would be such a summoning skill. Fortunately, the attractive force was not all that strong. Otherwise, Jianchen was afraid that the space ring would be unable to hold it in. Jianchen clenched the space ring tightly so that the seal of Treasure Mountain wouldn't escape. The bloody formation slowly began to grow faint before disappearing from view completely. However, the third elder who had drawn the formation grew pale in the face. It would appear that this secret skill had used up a lot of his energy. "Jianchen, you cannot deceive us. It is still within your possession. You should hand it over to us so we may return home without any further conflict." The third elder's expression was weaker than before, but the honest face was still there. As it was now, Jianchen didn't bother to hide any more secrets and spoke. "Seniors, you should go home. Are you certain that you will not return the seal of Treasure Mountain? It will only bring you more trouble." The third elder asked Jianchen once more for confirmation. "That is not your business to worry about." Jianchen didn't plan to return the seal of Treasure Mountain. In fact, he would rather give it to someone else rather than return it to the Sher family. He knew that even if he were to give it back, the family would still not forgive him. He was already well experienced in matters like this. The third elder sighed before taking out an embroidered pouch. "Jianchen, do you know what this is?" When Jianchen didn't answer, the third elder continued to speak. "This is a poison I spent a dear sum of money to purchase from a friend. Inside is what is known as the 100 Poisons powder. Its poison is extremely toxic and is the amalgamation of hundreds of poisons. It is without flavor or color and can be spread through the air. As long as this poison enters the body, then even a heaven saint master will not escape unharmed. Aside from a specially made antidote, this poison is incurable." Hearing this, even the fourth elder had become surprised. "Third elder, you truly are a mastermind. How admirable! No wonder you had me eat a pill early, that was the antidote." The third elder laughed and nodded his head before looking at Jianchen smugly, confident that he had power over Jianchen's life now. Jianchen also smiled as he looked at the elder. "Third elder, if you could tell me, am I poisoned?" "Correct." The third elder nodded his head. "Jianchen, ever since we entered the room, I used this powder to send poison through the air, spreading it throughout the room. You've already breathed in the poison, but you weren't able to detect it." Unable to stop himself from laughing, Jianchen threw his head up carelessly for a moment before looking back to the indescribable faces of the third and fourth elders. "Third elder, I've neglected to tell you, but my body is immune to many things. Your poison holds no power over me." Jianchen laughed as if he had shared a funny joke. The third elder's face looked as if he had suffered a terrible blow as his expression immediately scrunched up to look rather vicious and ugly-like. Originally, he had thought he had finally cornered Jianchen, but Jianchen had somehow managed to cross the wall he had put up without any effort at all. "Fourth elder, we're going." With a swish of his robes, the third elder returned the powder to his sleeves and turned around. The fourth elder glared coldly at Jianchen. "Youngster, you had best stay within Mercenary City for the rest of your life." With that, the fourth elder left the building. That night, while Jianchen had noticed that there were no more uninvited guests, countless of hidden eyes had started to look at Jianchen around the clock. Jianchen knew that both the Jetta clan and Sher family were now monitoring him in an effort to prevent him from escaping from under their eyes and take their ruler armament away with him. Chapter 350. Departing with ease. As for the Jetta clan monitoring him, Jianchen didn't care at all. This sort of development was something he had predicted a long time ago. On the second day, Jianchen left his room to stroll around the streets of Mercenary City. He walked east, he wandered west. There was no definite location in sight. But right behind him, several groups of men followed him from a decent ways away. Since they no longer feared being detected by Jianchen, they didn't care for being stealthy. Jianchen led the group on a day-long walk before finally returning back to his inn for the night. On the day after, Jianchen left the inn once more. When he left, the attendants behind him followed Jianchen 30 meters away. Not even caring to look at the group of people behind him, Jianchen wandered around Mercenary City once more. This time, staring toward the east while walking toward the west as if to enjoy the scenery around him. Soon, Jianchen came across a gambling house. With a smile that seemed ready to crack a joke, Jianchen walked into the place with the people behind him following him in. Within the gambling house, countless men were enthusiastically making noise. Those who had won money were crying out in joy, while those who had lost were all sighing with regret. Jianchen swiftly traveled through a group of people to an even larger crowd before blending in with the other gamblers. His figure instantly disappeared from the gambling house, leaving his stalkers to anxiously look around themselves. Emerging from the gambling house, Jianchen immediately switched streets and looked for a different inn to hide himself in. But by that night, Jianchen was found out once more as his stalkers surrounded the inn. What an annoying group of flies. Jianchen sighed to himself without any choice. With this group of people constantly chasing him, Jianchen couldn't leave Mercenary City. In the case the Jetta clan and Sher family leaders found out that he had left and his whereabouts, he would most likely be killed. The next day, Jianchen left his room and headed for the plaza where the palace was in Mercenary City. This area was where the inner city was connected to the outer road and the outside world. Since Jianchen was the king of mercenaries, his special identity allowed him to enter this place without any obstructions. However, a middle-aged man came to meet him this time instead. "Senior, this one would like to see the elders. Would that be possible?" Jianchen asked him politely. The man shook his head. "Out of the question, seeing the elders is not something that can be so easily done. Your ceremony has long since passed. Unless the elders wish to see you first, you cannot see them." Jianchen had a dejected look on his face, but he asked, "Then would it be possible for me to leave Mercenary City via the Space Gate?" Our Mercenary City Space Gate is for entering the city, which can only be used by the inner members. As for exiting the city via the Space Gate, you must have the permission of the elders, otherwise, even the inner members are forbidden from using it. The man explained. Depressed, Jianchen left the area. If he had known about this earlier, he would have asked the 8th elder for permission to leave the city during his time in the Holy Land. Wandering around the streets of Mercenary City once more, Jianchen began to think of an escape plan. After he had used the gambling house to escape his stalkers, they were now cautious of a second escape plan. Even the distance had decreased from 20 meters to a measly 5 meters. Even more audaciously, the group were now following Jianchen with an unbridled amount of arrogance, causing Jianchen no small amount of annoyance. If it were not for the fact that Mercenary City forbade violence, then Jianchen would have beaten them all up long ago for their arrogance. Jianchen knew that shaking them off at such a close distance would be too difficult. Even if he were to use the illusionary flash, if there were any wind attribute cultivators who were Earth Saint Masters, then at least 2 of them would be able to catch up with him. That night, Jianchen entered a random inn and ordered a meal and a room for the night to rest. The ones that were still following him had stumbled in as well and booked the adjacent rooms. The other group of men surrounded the inn in tight proximity to avoid Jianchen from escaping from them. The following morning, Jianchen left his room once more after eating an early breakfast. Then, he walked back into his room and began to cultivate. For the next couple of days, Jianchen hadn't left his room at all other than to eat a meal. The rest of his time was spent studying the illusionary flash. While the men outside his room still kept up a vigilant watch, they all realized that Jianchen was most likely planning to stay where he was for a long time, so they were now relatively relaxed. They needn't be on guard as they were a few days ago, but they still maintained a strong watch over Jianchen. No matter if it was day or night, there would still be someone watching, so it was as if there was a giant net being placed over the inn. In a flash, 10 days had passed by with Jianchen spending most of his time researching the illusionary flash. If he could understand the fragments of the profound mysteries of the world within his mind, then his comprehension of the illusionary flash would multiply several times over. He had already mastered the basics, allowing his speed to be double that of when he was in the gathering of the mercenaries. By now, Jianchen was almost comparable in speed to a 6th cycle wind attributed Earth Saint Master. At the very least, he could survive against a Heaven Saint Master. Of course, this was only just a conservative guess. He had only mastered the basics, so he could only guess how fast he was. Just how fast he was exactly, he didn't know since he hadn't been able to test it out yet. Early one morning, Jianchen slowly opened his eyes from his meditative posture and looked at the blooming skies. Muttering to himself, he spoke, "It's about time to leave." With that, Jianchen got off his bed and allowed a faint glow of azure and violet to be emitted from his finger. Floating overhead, it reached the wooden ceiling and immediately bore a hole into it, causing the wooden ceiling to shred apart like tofu. With a gentle push, Jianchen removed the half-a-meter-long circumference hole from the ceiling, revealing a single hole. Seeing the large hole, Jianchen cracked a smile before putting the wooden hole back in place for the meanwhile, and then he left the room. As per usual, Jianchen walked down for an early breakfast. After finishing, he walked back to his room and closed the doors and windows. Immediately, he began to take out a variety of herbs from within his space ring to begin to paint his face. Half an hour later, Jianchen lifted his head to reveal a completely different face than before. By now, his face was that of an ordinary-looking middle-aged man with several cut marks and even a beard, giving him a fierce look. Looking at his own reflection, Jian Chen nodded his head. Suddenly, a cracking sound could be heard as Jian Chen's stature suddenly grew thicker and even his height was increased. In no time at all, Jian Chen's physique had grown burly, the complete opposite of what he was before. Adorning a black robe from within his space belt, Jian Chen once more cut off the long hair that had trailed down his shoulders, leaving behind a greatly diminished amount. Once this had been done, Jian Chen was a completely different person in appearance with absolutely nothing that could link the two together. Even Ming Dong and Qin Xiao, who were both friends with Jian Chen, would not have been able to tell that this burly-looking man was him. Inspecting his face once more, Jian Chen made sure nothing had been overlooked before taking out the wooden hole cover from the ceiling. With a tiny leap, he immediately landed in the room above before replacing the hole. Closing the door to the room, Jian Chen walked outside. And just like that, Jian Chen had been able to avoid the eyes and ears of everyone else. As he strutted his way out, not a single person doubted him, let alone looked at him. As a result of the past few days, Jian Chen had deliberately allowed everyone to become accustomed to his habits. After his morning meal, he would shut himself up in his room in order to cultivate. Not a single one of them had figured that Jian Chen would change his appearances and try to leave. Walking onto the streets, Jian Chen walked himself into a bustling inn that had plenty of people already inside. After ordering a room, Jian Chen disguised himself once more as a thin-looking middle-aged man before leaving the building. With all of this done, Jian Chen walked to a store where he bought a map and several other items necessary for living in the rural areas. Then he walked to an isolated alleyway and changed his appearances once more. This time, Jian Chen disguised himself as a prominent son of a powerful clan. With a wig on his head and a Class 3 magical beast, Jian Chen rode the magical beast toward the merchant's gate outside of the city, where he took a leading position in front of a merchant group that was just getting ready to leave. This way, he was able to make the facade that he was the leader of the caravan group. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.